I was saying, then I might go. Stomach issues. Well, I have to be away from.
I've been there.
Do you know? I told you.
No, I know. I know it's different. It's
yeah,
here's
yeah.
the.
I haven't.
I had to have surgery in early because yeah, it's fun. No, you didn't. And then they get sewed up for it.
And they didn't sew it. No, it got sewed up right. It just.
When was that?
Last year, this time. Last year, this time I weighed 25 pounds less. Couldn't speak. I know that, but I'm saying I wait a couple seconds before I throw up. One of the reasons why I was good is one had a colonoscopy and they found X-ray there, so they sent out. I was 57. Yeah, I don't really call it. Yeah. stuff. So we just shave that off. And shave it out. That section is now out of the book. So it was like, this had to happen.
Oh, I don't get the blame for anything, yeah.
So it was just, but also keep it personal. Anyway, so everything's much better now. It's also like I lost my life. Yeah. Okay, well then very specific. I know. I don't have a. Oh, you're like. I'm just here for support. Yeah. Oh, but fine. I do want one. Monday. Before that. There's grass. Thank you. I appreciate it. And no, Mary, I literally produced the paper and I checked off. When's yours? It's oddly emotional. Yeah, it's weird. It's like, oh, no, if it was really, you'll get two. That doesn't mess with you. Oh, she's taking it to grad school. I've been. Oh, she's already done. I've been sweeping. She didn't do it. She just joined it. But they said everything. Oh, it's done. So, whatever. Okay. That's the bigger part.
Okay, bye, Gordy.
We're waiting for our legal counsel. We were in closed session. We ran over a little late, so I apologize for that. We'll be getting started in a couple minutes. Let's just get started. I know that Ethan will be in here in a second. I don't think we need Ethan for the first couple of things. I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask Madam Clerk to do a roll call, and then we'll move through it. Mr. Walsh is here right now, so that's fine. Madam Clerk.
Mayor Doring.
Here.
Vice Mayor Deasy.
Here.
Councilmember Barrick.
Here.
Spataroto.
Here.
And Summers is absent.
All right. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. I've been told to get closer to the mic when I speak, and I have a tendency to do this, so call me out on it if you see that happening, Mr. Barrick. All right. On to adoption of the agenda. Madam Clerk, are there any updates, or Mr. Camello, on the agenda?
There are none.
Okay, then I'll look for a motion to adopt the agenda.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor of adopting the agenda as is? Aye. Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. All right. On to item 5, approval of minutes. These minutes are from May 13, 2025. Any changes or notes from my council members, corrections? Then I'll look for a motion to adopt the minutes from May 13, 2025.
I make a motion to adopt the minutes.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
You want to do that one more time? Let's get... No, just kidding. Any opposed? All right, that motion prevails unanimously. We're on to public forum. Let me get a second here. Members of the public are entitled to speak on matters of municipal concern, not on the agenda during public forum. Each person's comment shall be limited to 4 minutes. Each person is entitled to speak on any non-agendized item only once at any meeting. Brief questions by council members for clarifications may be posed and answered, and council members may make requests that items be placed on future agendas, but in accordance with state law, no substantive discussion or action may take place unless and until the matter properly appears on the agenda. Anyone from the public wishing to address your city council tonight? Okay, I will close public forum. Any items for the future from my council colleagues that would fall under this category? Seeing none, we'll move on. Mr. Carmelo, we're going to move on to reports by staff and city council, future agenda items, and AB 1234 reports. I'll turn to Mr. Walsh first because we were in closed session before this meeting, and I would ask you to report out, Mr. Walsh. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we had a closed session immediately prior to this meeting. There was 2 items on the closed session agenda. The first was conference with city labor negotiators for all of our represented and unrepresented bargaining groups. And then the second was conference with real property negotiators. I did want to note there was an inadvertent addition to that item. The properties under discussion were 1480 Main Street and 1572 Railroad Avenue. It did not include APN 009-150-006, and there is no reportable action from either of those items.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Manager, Mr. Mello, anything else to report by your staff?
We just have one announcement. I'll call upon Director Jens to do so.
All right. Welcome, Mr. Jens. How are you?
Doing well. Good evening, Mayor, council members. Believe City Clerk Opp is pulling up a slide here, but I'm here just to provide our update on the fireworks fundraising. As you may recall, 2 weeks ago we were here and we're at the point of about $12,000 raised. Pleased to share that as this comes up here, we've raised $38,000 to date, and so at this point have hit the council's target of $30,000 to move forward with initiating the contract with the fireworks instructor, but are hopeful and optimistic that we'll get to the $40,000. And I just want to take this moment, we can go ahead to the next slide. When I say we, that is a very strong and collective we. This is in large part and almost in totality to the community who has stepped up. Business owners, individuals, organizations who have generously stepped up in a short period of time to sponsor and support the fireworks. And Eric, if you don't mind just scrolling through, we've got 3 pages. So on the GoFundMe page, 121 different donors. So huge thank you to all of these individuals, these groups for making this happen. And also a handful of community members who have worked tirelessly to help spread the word to go out to raise funds. I won't publicly recognize them here this evening because I'm not sure if they'd like to be done so, but we'll work with them and do so at the right time if they so choose. So just want to let the council know that we are moving towards entering into a contract with the fireworks contractor. I spoke with them on Friday. They are still available and very excited to come back to St. Helena. This, of course, has to do, we have to watch the weather closely and fire conditions, so we'll be coordinating directly with our fire department, the school district, and our public works department in site logistics, safety, and preparations for the fireworks show. So with that, happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions from my colleagues? All right, thank you for that. No, I don't see anyone asking questions. Thank you for the contributions to this this event. All right, Mr. Mello, anything else from your staff or you?
I just want to acknowledge Director Jens's personal commitment and contributions as well. He worked well a lot of people contributed and worked behind the scenes. He did so as well, so I wanted to acknowledge that.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Okay. We're on to item 8, presentations and public recognitions. Mr. Camello, I'll let you introduce this item. It's an update from Library Board of Trustees Chair Deborah Claymon Boeschen. Mr. Camello.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this has been our new tradition. We have had presentations by the Planning Commission as well as the ATSC, and now it's the turn of our library. So welcome.
Welcome. How are you?
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm well, thanks. I'm Deborah Claymon Boeschen. I'm the current chair of the St. Helena Library Board of Trustees. I'll just give you a snapshot of what we're up to and happy to take your questions. So we have a 7-member board, and I'm delighted that we have 3 other board members here with us tonight. Courtney Fletcher, Dana Johnson, and Jack Stewart. Our other board members are Jillian Casey, who's the vice chair, Jonathan Ferrada, and Juana Navarro. Next, oh, thank you. You anticipated my next slide statement. I won't read all these words because I think people have a pretty good understanding, but oh, thank you.
You're fine. We can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yeah, you're doing well. You have a good voice.
I will talk into the microphone. We're committed to supporting both the mission of the library and the vision of the library, so both its essential functions and its evolution as the community needs and the resources related to library services continue to change. A quick run through on our priorities. We focus on the direction and long-term efficacy of the library. We take a high-level review of library operations. We review and try to reinforce and amend library policy and regulation. We're very focused on community feedback, and we coordinate with the Friends and Foundation, which is the nonprofit group that fundraises for the library. We've also supported the onboarding of our new head librarian, Mara Strickler, who's also here tonight. It's been great working with her and having her perspective, professionalism, and new ideas. For the first time, the library board has a work plan. The library board never had one before. And so this is our first work plan. We're kind of doing some basics and hope to, in our second annual work plan, keep things moving. Prioritizing the library's mission, supporting library leadership, really looking at the space usage of the library building and the space around it. We've piloted an ex officio youth board member, which has been fantastic. And we're really working on fostering more connections with the library, with community services, and the community at large. Some recent accomplishments. We never had subcommittees before either. We're working on more tactical application of our work through subcommittees that address our board priorities. So they are currently communications, compliance, organizational sustainability, technology, and youth engagement. I mentioned our youth board member before, but it's good to highlight that as well. And we've focused on fine-tuning some policies, particularly related to the collection, to displays in the library, to photographing and videoing at library programming, and we're continuing to hone how our board priorities line up with both the municipal code and the needs of the library leadership. That's my official presentation. I'd be happy to answer your questions, and I've got some backup from my fellow board members and Mara.
Questions, comments from my colleagues? Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation and all the good work. Can you share a little bit more about how you're thinking about technology?
I wish our subcommittee chair, Jonathan Ferrada, was here. He's a software engineer, a young guy, a new dad in town, and he's been fantastic in working with Mara to look at our current systems, both kind of back-end stuff and how we interact with resources for the way we get interlibrary loan, digital books, audiobooks, et cetera, other digital resources, and how we have technology in the library itself. So looking at our current laptop sharing, hotspot sharing, et cetera, we still have some pretty old desktop computer situations in the library. We're really hoping to pilot some pods that can be used for Zoom meetings and other kind of live interaction with technology. So that's some evolution to try to both, that's kind of behind the scenes, and then also for, our community users. Apparently I did okay. Yeah.
So what I'm seeing is just a remarkable improvement in terms of the professionalization of this board and just the commitment to so many important topics. I'm an old school guy, I've been here for 11 years, and I always thought that there was a disconnect. There was that board over there, and nobody, at least from here, from our perspective on the council, really knew what was going on. Even this name, the Board of Trustees, it was a limiting title in a way. And you certainly have obviously expanded the role to our community's benefit. I guess the only question I would ask is how do we, this is a good example of maintaining communication between the council and the board to make sure that we're all on the same page. How do we improve that going forward in terms of, okay, what is the mission of the city? What is the mission of the city council? How does that align with the board so that there's not this sort of separateness that maybe it's a figment of my imagination, but I still feel a little bit of that, a little disconnect between what we do and what you do. Any ideas there around that
Sure.
particular issue?
Sure, and I would agree with you. I joined the board just before our organizational change to become under the umbrella of community services. And that board was comprised of a lot of members who had been on the board for many, many terms. And I think they were a bit of an island, both for the library itself and compared to maybe the rest of the community and in communicating to the council. I think our current membership is really committed to connection with community and you guys as an extension of that. We like to think of ourselves as 3 A's: advisors, advocates, and ambassadors. And so I hope we can continue to do a better job of an ambassadorial role with you. I'd really give a shout out to Dave Jans. You're getting all kinds of shout outs today, Dave, because he really has led this organizational transition to the library being part of community services in just a really transparent and energetic way that I think has helped re-energize the board of the library and being less of an island in the community.
Yeah.
And so we can work with Dave to make sure we have opportunities to share some of our exciting stuff. There's some really cool ideas happening with youth engagement at the library itself, and then with youth engagement that overlaps with Park and Rec, and that's really fun to see. And we've had some great ideas coming both from our ex officio youth board member, Jacob, and also from our new member, Juana Navarro, who's an employee of the Up Valley Family Centers and works in the Calistoga School District. And so just her perspective on youth population is going to be a great addition. So I hope that helps.
It does help. I didn't mean to suggest it was a criticism at all. I see just a remarkable improvement just in terms of, I'm not sure if I've ever seen the vision and mission statements. It's nice to, okay, there they are, because it sort of grounds us in what are we doing for the community. And I think just sharing that more often with us and with the community, this is our role in the community, this is what we do. We all know that the library is cherished in our community. It's a jewel of our community. Not only our community, others, come and visit and love our library. All good work. I think the thing I would just leave you with is let us know how we can help you serve, and thank you for your service and your report.
Thank you. Well, and I would just say that there's so much at the library that's beyond books. I mean, I know most of us know that now about our modern world in terms of information, but the library is also the place where we had just an incredible turnout for Mexican Independence Day across our community. And also when there was a power outage, I think it was February, was that when we had kind of an extended power outage? The library was packed because the library is a safe space with a generator and with hotspots that could be used. So, I mean, there wasn't a free plug in the library during that time, and a real cross-section of our community, then interacting with the library services there. So bring your questions to the library. Lots of things we can help with.
All right.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Good work. Okay. Mr. Mello, it doesn't look like we have any other staff briefing tonight. We're on to the consent
That's correct.
calendar.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Members of the council or the public present at the meeting may ask that any items be considered individually for purposes of considering alternative action, for extended discussion, or for public comment. Unless that is done, one motion may be used to adopt all recommended actions. I'll turn to my colleagues first to see if anyone would like to pull an item for a little bit more discussion. If not, anyone from the public. Mr. Warner, which one would you like to have pulled? Shocking. Let me take the time to circle that one. All right. And so we'll have a little bit more conversation about 10.7. I'll look for a motion to approve the balance of the consent calendar.
Make a motion to approve the balance of the consent calendar.
The motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent calendar with the exception of item 10.7, which we'll talk about shortly. We'll do a roll call, Madam Clerk, please.
Vice Mayor Deasy,
Yes.
Councilmember Spadafora,
Yes.
Barrick,
Yes.
and Mayor Doran.
Yes. All right, let's talk about 10.7. Would you want somebody to do a little brief report, Mr. Comello, or you will do it?
Well, I'll invite, unless there's Director, I see Finance Manager Beltran here, so I'll let him take the first shot, and then Director Kellogg and I can assist.
And I think, you probably had a chance to see Mr. Warner's letter, so you kind of, if we can maybe partially address that in your explanation, that would be great. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. This is a second reading of an ordinance bringing forward 3 recommended changes to our Title 13 of the city's municipal code. The first item for City Council's consideration is a transition from a bi-monthly to a monthly billing. With the second, reducing the utility bill due date window from a 30-day to a 21-day. And then the last recommended action was basically eliminating late penalties and interest charges on delinquent utility bills. So the idea behind this recommendation was to ease the transition from bi-monthly to monthly billing and help with the payment window being shortened from a 30-day payment window to 21 days. So we're losing about 9 days of payment window for our customers. If the ordinance is approved, utility customers will receive their last bi-monthly utility bill in July, and that's going to be for usage and flat fees on May and June of this year. And then they will receive their first monthly bill in August for their July use. So there's going to be a 2-month bill in July and their first monthly bill in August. So that's kind of the idea behind that third recommendation. And so with that, staff is available to either provide additional clarification or answer any additional questions.
All right. I'll look to Mr. Warner to make a few comments, and then we can have a conversation here back at the council level. Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Warner.
Thank you. I'm Chris Warner. I'm solely here personally, not as representing any committee or office of the city. And I'm only here to oppose the elimination of penalties and interest payments for non-payment of bills. Have I told you how much I hate paying credit card interest and fees and penalties and other penalties from businesses and utilities and other. I share with all of you generally not liking the fact that we are required to pay late fees at all. However, I'm an adult, and when you have a business that's providing you services, you act like an adult. And when I read the initial staff report here, there was a reference to equity, quote unquote, and temporary hardship, unquote. Only recently did I discover that the only reason for not charging penalties and interest on non-payment of water bills is administrative convenience for the staff. I accept that, and I think there are ways to work around that and to provide an opportunity for staff and the customers to have time to kind of pay their bills, whether it's 30 days or 60 days. But what is so unbusinesslike is to totally eliminate penalties and interest on something that is part of the business of the city and in which we're all adults. And by the way, this doesn't have anything to do with low-income assistance for water users. In fact, the opposite. We have a low-income assistance program already. This would solely subsidize wealthy customers who decide not to pay their bills on time. And I object to that. I'm a wealthy customer. I'm a well-to-do customer. It's not a temporary hardship for me. I've forgotten to pay my bill on time on occasion. That doesn't mean that I, as an adult, have an excuse to kind of indefinitely defer payment until the city comes after me with a legal action. I just think this was an ill-conceived idea. I think it can be compromised. I think it can be worked out. But you don't want to leave $66,000 of projected penalties and interest on the table over and over again simply because of administrative inconvenience. If there's any need for extra help to calculate the late payments, I'll be happy to volunteer and come in, wear a green eye shade, and basically try to help the staff. But just doing this for administrative convenience is, in my opinion, not a prudent way to manage the city's budget. Plus, by the way, this is general fund money. This isn't water enterprise money. This is general fund money that you would leave on the table in a time of financial difficulty. So that's all I have to say. I defer to you. It's your judgment. But please don't subsidize well-to-do customers in the name of equity or temporary hardship when the real reason is you don't have the staff or the time to administratively impose the penalties and the interest.
Thank you for that,
Thank
Mr. Water. All right, let's bring it back to the any comments from the staff on some of the points. Administrative convenience, that there's a cost to that, but I'd like to know what that cost is. The equity issue, it's not just, I would say it's not just wealthy people who would be benefiting from that. Poor people would be benefiting from it too, obviously. Poor people pay their bills late, just like wealthy people pay their bills. What say you, Mandy Kellogg?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I would say that one was taken a little out of context. It isn't just for administrative convenience. However, that was taken into consideration. We do get quite a few phone calls related to past due fees, and there is definitely a high level of phone calls that are generated from those past due notices that go out. So that is something that we did take into consideration when evaluating. But we did also look at this transition going from the bi-monthly to monthly, and it is going to create a hardship for some customers up front because we are essentially going to be giving them 3 months worth of bills within a 1-month period. And so that maybe there is a compromise there that we could reevaluate it, but that was part of why we took this into consideration. And plus, when we were researching other agencies and kind of looking at their payment windows, we discovered that there are other utilities that don't assess past due fees. And so we did take that into consideration as well.
What is the ultimate downside if somebody doesn't pay their bill in St. Helena?
Ultimately, they would get their water shut off. So we do have a process that we have to go through to do that, which we are already currently doing. But if they don't pay the bill, the water will be shut off until they do pay the bill. And then they would have to pay an additional fee for us going out there to turn off the water.
What are the logistics under the new smart meter program for notifying a customer? I would hope the answer is immediately. Bill's due on this date, bill does not come in. Do we have a plan to have a sort of an automatic notice? Hey, your bill is due. You need to pay your bill to sort of build in a more immediate response to the payment to maybe mitigate against people who want to wait a little longer than others?
Yeah, I'm not sure there's any connection between the smart meters and our billing software, which would be what generates those notices that let them know that they're subject to termination. But we do have requirements from the law that we have to put door hangers out there to notify people, you're getting close to that window. If you don't respond, you're going to get shut off.
So if somebody's late with their payment, look in the future, okay, a 1-month bill and they're late, when do they first get notified that they are late? Do they have to wait? Do we have to wait till the next billing cycle?
So
Because that seems a lot, and I think that does create a little bit of an issue of a lag time there.
Yeah, so the first notification to them goes out, and I might need to turn back to Finance Manager
That's fine, I
Beltran
understand
here,
that,
but
yeah.
the first notification is in that 30-day after the bill was generated. That's when the late fee is assessed and they receive their first past due notice. And then I believe we go to 45 days after the bill was generated that they'll receive another notification. And then I believe the total is 75 days from the point of when we first issued to the bill to when they actually get turned off.
Do you have an idea of how many of the accounts are on an automatic payment system, roughly, percentage-wise?
I believe we ran some numbers not too long ago, and it was about 60% of our accounts are on automatic payments.
What does the city do to try to is it to our benefit to have folks on automatic payments?
Absolutely. It reduces, possible getting shut off for forgetting to pay your bill, and then also reduces workload for staff as well, too.
What does the city do to advertise that kind of, the benefits to the customer, but also, the availability of the automatic payment? Are we doing that in our billing literature?
Yeah, we'll put it in our mailers, and then we also have some verbiage on the bill itself, too, that will say that there's availability for automatic payments.
All right. Let me bring it back to council for more discussion and comment. Any other ideas here, or just the notion, I guess, the philosophical notion of not charging penalties and interest? Thoughts from others. I'm not wedded to this one way or another, but it's an interesting issue. I was thinking, well, let's try it out and see how it works, but I don't know. Mr. Barrett.
I thought Mr. Warner wrote an excellent letter, and we talked with Director Kellogg, I think early this morning, around maybe there's some middle ground, not everything has to be 0 or 100, that if the staff has some concerns, and perhaps rightly so, of being overburdened with the switchover in the 30 days, could we just keep it what it was at 60 days for penalties? Would that suffice to bridge a balance between the two concerns?
Give an example of what you mean by that, because I'm not sure I follow the point.
Today, if you get a bill every 2 months, so folks are conditioned, you get a bill every 2 months, you pay your bill or you don't. And so we're only concerned with obviously the ones that don't pay their bill. So you don't pay your bill, and at some point after that, there's a window for a late charge. I'm not sure what that window is, but let's say it's 15 days after the due date, or 30 days. What is it, Mandy?
The late fees assessed the day after 30 days from the date that the bill is issued.
Okay. And then so forth and so on before they get the water cut off. So we could simply just keep those, we wouldn't have to bring it forward. Perhaps we just keep it the way it is today, and perhaps that would suffice from a staff perspective. There'd be potentially no more.
Okay, I follow you now.
work
Thank you. Yeah, I
than it
understand
was
what you're
before.
saying. Ms. Badarotto, of course.
Thank you. I'm totally in line with what Aaron was saying. I think the other option, and I think maybe on top of what Councilmember Barrick was saying, on top of that is if we are sending out email notices saying your bill is coming due, I don't know how many notifications they get, but usually you can also then notice if they've opened those bills. You can notice if they've opened emails, so you can see if they actually. They can't then use the late excuse saying, oh, I forgot that it was due. I didn't know that it was due, because you can see that they've been opening the emails. So that could maybe alleviate, some of the having to do more research and determining whether or not these late fees are justified or not. Because if they know they can't afford that they're going to be late, they should be able to then, reach out and say, hey, I got notification that I'm going to have to be paying my bills due soon. Is it okay if I'm 10 days late? Where there's, so those kinds of things that maybe could help. I don't know if that's an option or not, but maybe in addition to, rather than it being every 30 days a late fee, or, still keep it at the 60 days late fee, but at the same, I don't know if that could be even more confusing though for customers or not. I think having the emails going out and letting them know, and if they're opening those emails and they're not telling you that they can't pay their bill, and they know it's due. So I don't know if that would help alleviate some of the time. But I do, again, thank you very much, Mr. Warner, for the email. That's all I have to say.
Vice Mayor Deasy.
Thank you. I have a question. If someone has a hardship, is there let's say, the penalties and the interest, we kept that. Is there an opportunity for someone who has a genuine hardship to pick up the phone and call and explain that and get a few month waiver of fees?
Yes, so what we'll do is we do offer to our customers a hardship agreement. And so if they're having trouble getting caught up with their bill, they can take that past due amount and spread it over a period of 12 months and make smaller payments to us in addition to their ongoing bills as well too. And during that time frame, we do not assess past due fees.
What's the staff's response? Apparently there was a conversation earlier, but I wasn't privy to that. But the staff's general response to keeping the status quo with a 60-day period as it is now?
Right now, it's actually a 30-day period. I think a 60-day actually might be helpful for us because then it gives more leeway for the customers. I think one of the things we were most concerned about is that the last time we were doing monthly billing is that we kept that 30-day due date, but we were forced to generate bills in advance of that. And so there was always this overlap of people getting bills saying it was past due when they'd actually made their payment.
Understood, yeah.
And so that was kind of part of where we were working through the details on that.
All right. Are you on the same page with Ms. Kellogg in terms of responding to your question? I'm not sure if you're both talking about the same thing or not. I just want to make sure you are. Okay. When you talked about 60 days, you're talking about, well,
That's right.
it's by monthly, so it is 60 days automatically,
right.
right? I get that.
Yep.
And you're talking about when the bill is received, you have 30 days to pay it.
It's from the statement date.
Right.
You
Those are
have,
a little bit two
yeah,
different things,
30
but I
days.
get the
But
point,
we
yeah.
Yeah,
assess the past due fee on that first day after that 30-day mark.
So extending it, extending that out to thread the needle.
Okay, I have another question. I don't want to divert attention, but I'm curious. I should have given you this question earlier, but just on the allocation of units that you get from month to month, it's a little confusing for me. So I'll give you an example. Say you have, so under the current system, you have 2 months, and you used 13 units. So under that scenario, as I understand it, that first 11, say it was like 9 the first month and 4 the second month. Now, so that 9 falls under the lowest rate, right? And then another 2 would fall under that low rate. You'd go the second month. So the allocation is over 2 months right now, right?
That's correct, yes.
That will change, right? The
That's correct.
allocations change. Does that have if you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
So we lose a little money, right, on the monthly billing under that scenario, correct? Because in my example, 9 units, you get that low rate, and then the next month, say you use only 4 units, you get the lowest rate. So it's a little bit different because under the current example, it would be 9 under the lowest rate, then 2, but then that next 2 would go to the next highest rate, right? And we lose that option. Did you follow me there?
The tiers will actually be adjusted to reflect monthly amounts.
They will.
So
How will they be adjusted?
It's going to be split, I believe it was 0 to 6 in the first tier, and then they get another
Okay.
2 units in the second tier,
Okay.
and then after that, it goes into the third
Okay, and I
tier.
saw that laid out very, very well in the
Yes.
staff report and the chart, and frankly, I didn't understand that. Now I do. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Are we all having consensus about the leave as status quo on the penalties and interest, or are there contrary views? Contrary views.
I feel good about it, especially given that someone can call and have their fees waived if they have a genuine hardship.
Mr. Mello?
So I just want to make sure the direction is clear, so.
Well, so do I.
Yeah, thank you. So as I understand it, it's, what I'm hearing is that from staff perspective anyway, correct me if I got this wrong, we would extend the date when the penalties will be assessed to be 60 days after the billing period. The billing period, just to be clear, takes about 2 weeks after the end of the cycle. So is that
It would be 60 days after the statement date.
statement date? That's what I meant,
That's right.
yes,
Yeah, that's
that.
right.
That. So if that's what you're, so we are essentially delaying the penalties, but we will collect the penalties after the 60 days.
Then I would like to ask Mr. Walsh whether this kind of a change on the second reading is beyond more than significant, or whatever the terminology, legal terminology is. Is it okay for us to do this at the second reading stage?
No, we would have to reintroduce it.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Reintroduce for first and second.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So what does that do to the best laid plans by your staff?
We'd have to see if we have enough time to get the notice into the newspaper, because it does require a public hearing notice. It may delay implementation. Our plan was to implement July 1st, and I believe, Erica, we have at least a 2-week notice before we can get it into the paper. Okay, so we wouldn't be able to do the first reading until the second meeting in June, and we don't have a first meeting in July, so we wouldn't be able to do the second reading until the second meeting in July.
And then is a 30-day waiting period after that, correct?
I believe there was no waiting period, Ethan, is that correct?
Not for this, no.
So then it could go into effect as early as August 1st?
That would actually split a bill, I believe, so we'd probably need to delay it 1 more month so we don't split a bill in half. Yeah.
How does that change your calculations, council members? What are the implications there on the delay?
Well, for us,
Need to think about.
the rate increase was going into effect
I
on
know,
July 1st.
right.
So we were hoping that we
Right.
would handle both the changes at the same time. Now we'll have to do the split, which administratively is going to be a little bit more complicated. I'll let.
Is it possible, I'm asking the city attorney, to just decline the recommendation for number 3, but approve number 1 and 2? And then we could come back with some type of recommendation for.
No, it's not. It's all part of the ordinance that was introduced last time, and when you make like significant textual changes, you're not allowed to move it on to second reading.
All right, I'm trying to think of another creative solution. It's not coming to me, Mr. Camello. Lawyers. No, I knew that was going to be a significant issue. Well, I think nobody's balking at moving forward with the recommendation by by all of us to maintain the status quo on the penalties and the interest. Mr. Camello, I spoke too soon. You were too late. What else do you have to say? Are you going to talk us out of it? Mr. Camello, go ahead.
Well, this may sound crazy, but I think there's some education component here with the moving to a one-month cycle or a monthly cycle. I wondered, this was a conversation perhaps with discussion with Mr. Walsh, whether we can move forward with this without changes as is, and then come back and then have the penalty issue addressed as was outlined. That goes into effect, that is the elimination and so on, goes into effect in September. Is that possible? I'm just trying to
I understand that.
keep the
may be
monthly
creative.
cycle start the same as the new rate increase.
So we would be adopting the exact same ordinance that's presented in front of us, but then come back later and then change that ordinance slightly.
So you would adopt this, and then you would adopt a new ordinance that would reinstitute the penalties with the slight modifications that you discussed.
Correct. So we would only be skipping, in the ideal world, the impact would be for 2 months, July and August.
I mean, we could adopt it, right? And then we could adopt a subsequent ordinance. As to the timing of that, I think that would be okay. There may be some additional noticing for the penalties that we would have to do. That's the only thing I'm not sure of off the top of my head.
All right, well, I'll look for a motion to that effect, if anybody's willing to do that. It's a little bit of delay in getting to the same goal, because we have other interests in mind that are pressing. They all have to come together at the same time, unfortunately. Mr. Barrick, what do you think?
I think it's a very creative solution to the problem that gets us where we need to go. But on the motion, does it, can we just adopt it and then just agendize?
Yeah, with direction to agendize.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to adopt and then agendize to reinstitute the penalties at a later date.
There-
Is that-
okay.
That's clear to me. I
Clear to you?
understand.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. I'm not sure if there's any other comment on that. I think we're getting to the same goal with a little bit of a delayed move there. So that's the best we can do. The points are well taken. Madam Clerk, we'll have a roll call vote on this one, please.
Councilmember Barrick,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Deasy,
Yes.
Councilmember Spataroto,
Yes.
and Mayor Doring.
Yes. All right, thank you for that work. Okay, we're on to, thank you, Mr. Martin. Mr. Beltran, Martin Beltran. All right, on to public hearings. Public hearing on vacancies, recruitment, and retention efforts in compliance with Assembly Bill 2561. That is also known as Government Code Section 3502.3. Mr. Mello, I just alerted you to this a couple days ago, and you had it all ready to go anyway, right?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, unfortunately, I was ready for this also because I went lobbied on this last year and failed. This came out of, well, anyway, it's not a good idea, but it's now a requirement. With that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Kellogg.
All right, Ms. Kellogg, you're back.
Yes.
Oh, there you are. I lost track of you.
I've got 3 in a row, so I figured I'd join you up here. All right, good evening, Mayor and council members. So this is a reporting on Assembly Bill 2561. I'm just going to give a brief summary, some workforce data, vacancy data, and what recruitment efforts we are doing. So AB 2561 declares that job vacancies in the local government are a widespread and significant problem for public sector, and that job vacancies may undermine labor relations between public agencies and their employees. So AB 2561 requires that on an annual basis that the government do a public hearing to report out on tracking job vacancies at the agency, present status of vacancies, recruitments, and retention annually, and that has to be done prior to the adoption of the budget, and also identifies any policies, procedures, and recruitment activities that present obstacles in hiring. If a vacancy rate in one bargaining group exceeds 20%, there are some additional reporting requirements. Next slide. So at July 1st, 2024, the city had a total of 81 full-time positions budgeted. That number remains the same right now. They provide a variety of services, which include our administration, which is city manager, city clerk, finance, HR, IT. We also have our community development department, fire, library, parks and rec, police, and public works, which includes both our administration for public works, the field crews, and also the treatment plants. Next slide. So the citywide vacancy rate we picked 3 points throughout the year. On July 2024, it was 11.1%. December 2024, 9.9%, and in May it remains at 9.9%. We have 3 bargaining groups that are represented, which is our Police Officers Association, the St. Helena Employees Association, and the St. Helena Professional Firefighters. We also have unrepresented management as well. Here's a reporting of the vacancy rates by the different groups. Police Officer Association was at 11.8 at the start of the year and is now at 17.6. They didn't breach the 20%, but it is getting close. SHIA started at 13.9 and is ended the year at 7.9. Fire has remained a steady 0. And a group started at 9.1 and has reached 10% at May. Oh, and I forgot to notate as well, too, that the bargaining groups have a right to speak at the public hearing and also do a presentation of their own. They did decline doing a presentation. The next section here is on our recruitment efforts. Next slide. So the city completed a total of 19 recruitments during fiscal year 25. We filled 14 positions. We currently have 8 vacancies. I would like to point out that 3 of those 8 vacancies are positions that council has chosen to freeze those positions, so we will not be recruiting for those. And we do have 3 active recruitments at this time. Some of the hiring obstacles that we've had is that the competitive job market for specialized positions such as police officers and the chief plant operator. Also in this region here, we struggle with affordable housing, therefore many employees have to commute longer. And then in the public sector, pre-employment screenings and background checks are very intensive and can delay the process as well, which leads to losing candidates. Some hiring solutions that we have is that we did implement a hiring incentive for our plant operators, our chief plant operators specifically. This helped us retain a chief plant operator in the water treatment plant. We do also started doing some targeted recruitment strategies, such as we did direct reach out to people who were certified to serve at our plants. We've also started streamlining the background process. We've minimized the requirements that we had for some of the medical requirements, which has helped speed up the process. We are intending on doing a compensation and class review, which will also include a review of our job descriptions to help make them more enticing to the public. And then development opportunities for our employees. We do collaborate with Napa County, where we have some training that we work with them that provides additional opportunities. We also have an employee recognition program. We're looking at ways to revamp or enhance those programs as well too. And that's all to create a more positive work culture for our employees. And then we're going to start moving forward with developing a more robust succession planning. And that's the end of the presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Any initial questions seeking clarification before I open it to public? Okay. All right, then I'm going to take this time to open the public hearing. It's a public hearing. Look for anybody to address your council on this particular issue. Seeing none, I'll close public hearing and bring it back to council. What is the direction?
This is a receive and file.
That's what I thought.
Yes, thank you.
Comments about this receive and file? Everybody okay with receiving and filing it? All right. Thank you, Ms. Kellogg. All right.
Thank you.
All right. We're on to item 12, old business. This is a review and discussion of the Finance Committee recommendations. Mr. Camillo, I'll let you introduce the item. We'll have a conversation about this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you remember last meeting, we had a slide, maybe 2 slides, about the recommendations from the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee has spent a lot of time and effort on those different recommendations, and unfortunately, we did not spend the time to go through them in detail last time. So here's another opportunity to do so. And with that, I'll turn it over to Director Kellogg.
Thank you, Mr. Camillo.
Thank you. So what we have here is we put together some slides that had the recommendations from the Finance Committee, and we wanted to give an opportunity to go through them and discuss. Next slide. So we have this broken up into 3 different slides so we can make it large enough for you to see here. But the first 2 slides are recommendations for reductions in the budget or the proposed budget. The last slide is recommendations on addressing some of our long-term needs. So on this slide here, we have recommendations 1, 2, and 3. We did actually already implement into the proposed budget, as well as number 4, and that was reducing the council contributions to match 26 and 27 to be the same. So all 4 of those items were actually already implemented into the proposed budget. Items number 5, 6, and 7 were recommendations from the Finance Committee to remove budgeted line items for contracts that weren't designated for a specific consultant. The city normally keeps those in the budget in order to kind of streamline processes throughout the year, so we don't have to come to council and ask for appropriations on things that we're trying to, basically, they arise throughout the year, and just circumstances happen. So staff does recommend leaving those 3 line items in there. It's not necessarily mean that we'll actually spend them. It's only there if a need comes up. That's also the same with number 8, which is reduce equipment replacement for IT spending. We have a budgeted line item in there for $50,000. That they're recommending reducing it to $25,000. I can say that when we had that cyber attack last year, that budgeted line item came in handy in order to create business continuity for us. We had a number of computers that were compromised, and staff couldn't do their job without those ability to get those computers turned around quickly. For the fireworks budget, you could see by Dave's presentation earlier that we've actually raised quite a bit of money, so that's something we, for the most part, have been able to implement their recommendation. Funding the CARES program with the enterprise funds rather than the general fund. This one is something we've been talking about quite a bit lately with our legal department here, and then also with the finance committee. Their recommendation to fund it with the enterprise funds, specifically using non-rate revenues. What that means is like the penalties and interest that we were talking about, and also interest earned in the wastewater fund as well too, to fund that program. Staff's concern with that is that those aren't necessarily stable sources of revenue, because it's dependent upon people not paying their bill or how the market is doing and how we perform on our investments. So it could be a situation where we're constantly having to reconcile between the two on whether we have enough in the water fund to cover the amount that we're funding in the CARES program. On number 11, we did some research with MBTA and determined that this program could be funded with Measure U funds. We would have to take our 5-year adopted list back to City Council and then have it approved by MBTA, but when I spoke to them, they said that that shouldn't be an issue at all. On number 12, charging planning customers credit card fees. This one's more complicated because from what I understand, if you can't just charge one component or person a fee, it has to be across the board. So if we're charging customers credit card fees on the planning side, we would also need to do the same on the utility side. So we'd be passing those fees on to our utility customers as well. And we do highly encourage customers to pay with credit cards because it's much faster processing and less likely that we're going to get return checks. And then funding the Vine Trail over one with traffic mitigation fees, that was the original recommendation from the Finance Committee. And in talking to our attorney, it doesn't qualify with how the development impact fee was adopted. In order for it to qualify, we would have to redo that study in order to incorporate that project, and only a portion of it could be funded with the mitigation fees as well. I know the Finance Committee has an additional recommendation, which I'm sure they'll speak to on how that could be paid for. And lastly, they called out a compensation analysis. And so we have issued an RFP and plan to bring something to you next month to issue a contract to do a full class and comp study, which will include analysis of our benefits as well. And then these next 3 items here are related to addressing our long-term needs. One of them is funding the unfunded liability by $500,000. Funding major improvements and betterments of $200,000, and then vehicles and equipment of $100,000. Staff agrees that this is much needed and that we should fund these things. Deficit, we feel that it's going to drive our reserve levels down below the 30% threshold by year 2 of this 2-year budget if we include these in there. Questions?
Initial clarifying questions from my colleagues before I open it to public comment. All right, let's invite public comment. I did see a letter come in, early this afternoon. Ms. Smithers, you wrote a letter. Thank you for additional clarifications on some of the points. Anything you would like to highlight, or anybody from the public wishing to comment at this point?
Mark Smithers, Chair of the Finance Committee. I actually didn't think I was going to speak. I thought Mandy was going to cover what we had said. So I guess let me expand on it. I don't know if everybody had a chance to read what we sent in. specifically to the NVVT funding of the $300,000, I mean, it's our, and you can read more, but it's our contention that under proper accounting principles and following even, generally accepted, the GASB, which covers government accounting, that 300,000 should actually be a 2025 expense and be accrued, and then could be paid over whatever time you want it to be paid. And Chris and I sort of talked about this last Thursday, and we're pretty confident that both of us could probably talk to the guys at the Napa Valley Vine Trail, and they would even be willing to accept that $300,000 over the next 4 years, which the monies would then really just come out of the Class 1 trail money, that the $85,000 that the city has to put into Class 1 trails every year to, for the benefit of Measure T and Measure U. So we think that's really the right way to do it, which means it would come out of the fiscal year 26 budget. So that's, some more specifics on that. We do have an issue. We don't agree with how, and I hear Mandy, saying that it's harder to come back if you don't have the monies there to get, approval. But if you don't really know what you're going to spend the $50,000 on times 3, we suggest you shouldn't put it in the budget. I mean, then that way everybody sort of has to talk about it. I know the council, and I know the city is into transparency. It would make it more transparent to the public if you have to then come back and talk about it later, and then you don't have to put it back in the budget if you don't spend it. And then the CARES program, as Mandy alluded to, I think they're researching that. Yes, there is a little bit of an issue with some unpredictability or uncertainty as to how much money will be there, but the CARES program really does belong in the water and wastewater enterprises, and
Why do you think that? I've seen that comment made several times, but what is the rationale behind that?
Well, because it's associated with the water enterprise and wastewater enterprise. It's you're supplementing low-income person's billings, so it's not really a general fund expense. And so you can use, penalties and interests that are non-rate revenues to pay for CARES program, and that's what other utilities do that don't have the benefit of a general fund.
But I understood someone to say that the interest and the penalties are actually going to the general fund, that they are general fund monies. No?
No. They're in the water and wastewater.
They stay in the water and wastewater fund?
There's interest
By law or by practice?
By practice, by law.
By practice, and,
Okay.
and my understanding is at least, and Mandy can probably speak to this better than I can, at least a portion of those are kind of factored into determining the rates.
All right. I took a minute of this time, so I don't want to continue on. We'll give you some additional time. I just needed to clarify that because it keeps coming up, and I wanted to know what the position is. Keep going, Mr. Smithers.
So, I mean, our approach is that even if there is some uncertainty as to what the penalties and interest amounts may be, I mean, you can pretty much forecast the interest amounts because I think you have a pretty good idea as to what the cash balances would be in the enterprises. The penalties, you can kind of use the prior year, roughly, but I guess the point is you should budget for it in the enterprises, and then if for some reason you come up a little bit short, then you can transfer $20,000 or $10,000 from the general fund in order to fully fund it if the penalties and interest come up short in the enterprise funds. It's where typically where you do see it.
All right.
Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Smithers. Others? Mr. Warner.
I was not going to speak on Finance Committee. The CARE stuff, I wanted to be sure that it's Chris Warner. I am on the Finance Committee. I want to be sure that the details in the CARE before you. It's important to have a needs assessment of the CARES program in terms of actual amounts that you want to budget. If the needs are higher than the amount you've budgeted in the past, that's fine. But you look at how the pace of funding and participation has been. I know you're considering some increases in the CARES funding, but I've seen nothing from staff that basically does a needs assessment of how many people are benefiting from it, how many are we projecting are going to need it, what the actual run rate is in terms of people. By the way, every June, every participant in the CARES program has to reapply. So there's an opportunity to relook at their qualifications as well as where they are in terms of their income levels, et cetera. The other thing I think that's important that Mark was mentioning is that I really appreciate the exchange I had with the city attorney over potential uses of interest and penalties and under Prop 218. I think we put the Prop 218 issue somewhat to bed if we follow the city attorney's guidance. And I think the guidance was that penalties are likely to not violate Prop 218, whereas interest, if it's assumed in the rates, would basically violate 218. On the other hand, you can change your assumptions in your rate studies. You can also look at how much the assumptions were. So I want to be sure that you understand that you have flexibility to basically consider these additional sources of revenues to pay for the CARES program, particularly if you look at both the interest and penalty side, but you also look at the needs assessment and update your needs assessment in terms of how many people need how many dollars in terms of the budget. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Others? All right, I'll close the public comment on the item, bring it back. I have a couple of questions. So I guess I'll talk about the Vine Trail first. That seems to be a little bit soft there in terms of what was said. My understanding is that the debt that we owe is not to the Vine Trail. The Vine Trail owes their own amounts. This $300,000, first of all, the NDTA has not asked for that money yet, right? They postponed it?
I might need to defer to Director Leach, but we did receive notification from them that this money was owed, but that they were willing to defer payment since it came to us more in a surprise, I guess you could say.
Correct.
But the Vine Trail would not be the party to say, hey, we'll take it over time. The notion of we have an $85,000 contribution that we have to make, that we use that over time to pay off this debt. It would be the NVTA that would make that decision, correct? Not the Vine Trail.
Correct. Our agreement is with NVTA.
All right. There's some possibilities there. What say you, Ms. Kellogg, regarding when the debt should be accrued? 2025 or 2026, and why is that important to you?
It should be 2025 because it's when the expense was incurred is when you would accrue that liability. I was unaware at the time that I received the email that the work had already been completed, but knowing that it has been completed, whether we pay it now or not, we do need to record it as a liability on our books for fiscal year 25.
Right. I can't really talk about a lot of what's going on in MBTA because it's a matter of closed session, but some of these concerns about this claim and other claims are the subject of heated negotiations, and our council will probably have to go into closed session to discuss that. So it's one of those things I would rather not have any of the members of our community go to MBTA at this point until that has sort of worked its way out. If lawyers in the room understand what I mean, I think that would be more prudent to not do that. So that is a developing situation. Is that fair way to put it, Mr. Walsh?
It is, yes.
Okay. I know that's very nebulous and it's intended to be that way. Let's see, what else did I have? So we're in agreement in terms of where to accrue the liability, and that is good. Compensation analysis will include the benefits analysis. I know there was a concern raised about that. Where the money comes from in terms of CARES program, there is a little uncertainty there, but we probably would be able to work through that. These are all fairly reasonable situations. I guess I do have a question. So I think folks need to understand the distinction between a budgeted item and an appropriation, right? And so we have these three different categories of $50,000. I forget what our thresholds are now, but those items would typically come back to the council if they're approaching a certain amount, and depending on what the contract is. So it would have the transparency that the community is looking for, I assume.
Yes, if the contract amount exceeds 25,000, it would need to be brought back to City Council for approval prior to authorizing the contract.
But I do, and I've been saying this ever since I was on the Calistoga City Council, that once you put something in a budget, people will they'll find a way to spend it. What do you think, Mr. Camelo? I mean, it's, we go, okay, this big project's going to cost $20 million, and everybody comes in, and it's exactly $20 million. Is that too cynical, Mr. Camelo? All right. And then I guess the final point, and maybe we'll need to get a little bit more dialogue on this one, is just the fundamental philosophical issue that I find on that $800,000 that folks want to pay up now, fund now. I'm very concerned about uncertainty. I'm concerned that if we use that money now and we go below our 30% reserve level, we can find ourselves in difficulty. And we've experienced this before. And you know this, Ms. Kellogg, you've been here long enough to know that we relied heavily on our reserve. The last time we had to freeze jobs, and there was a lot of turmoil because we were in deep trouble at that point, but we basically had those reserves to get us through difficulties. And difficulties can be fires, earthquakes, police incidents, or, things like that, litigation, all kinds of things that happen that we can really never anticipate. And I really want us to be firm on that 30%. So that's my reservation about it, although I see the philosophical theory there that if you put that money up front now, you save money in the long run. But I guess I'm not sure. I might want to hear more from my council members, but this notion of what is the staff's position on that? Is that basically it? You alluded to that earlier with your comments, that I assume by the end of 2026 we would be under the 30% level based on my very rough calculations of $800,000 coming out of reserves.
Yeah, my calculations were also rough because there's a number of moving parts that we're still looking at in developing this budget, but we would still be above that 30%, but we would be pushing close. And then the estimation is that if we continued that $800,000 contribution in fiscal year 27, we'd be about 24%. But again, these are just rough estimates.
All right. What are the thoughts of my colleagues? It's just questions I had, and you handled them well, so thank you. Others? Ms. Camelo, I was going to turn to Vice Mayor, but on the subject, of course, go ahead, and then I will turn to Vice Mayor Deasy.
I was just going to say that, Ms. Kellogg and I have discussed this matter. We certainly want to make sure that we are clear from staff perspective. These are good ideas. We think this is prudent budgeting. We should be paying more toward our liabilities, particularly our pension liabilities, because there's great benefit to that in terms of reduction of what we pay on an ongoing basis. And $500,000 is a sizable amount. In fact, if we had a chance to have extra $500,000 paid toward our pension, or just as soon pay CalPERS so that we can reduce our, principals, as it were. We certainly need more money in our other reserve accounts. But the challenge for us is this. You could, of course, if we can give you a balance right now or an estimate, we know that in the second year you're going to go below, most likely, more likely than not, going to go below the 30% threshold, which is really a council policy on reserves. You could, of course, waive that policy, but those are your alternatives. You either waive your policy now, knowing that you'll go below the reserves, or choose to, or you can make a decision or at least have an expectation that the council will need to direct staff to work on a ballot measure of some kind. And then the question becomes, okay, if you're going to do that into 2026, what other alternatives do you have before you? So those are the kinds of policy questions that come up. And for me, that's the reason we are saying we are more inclined to not pull these monies out of reserves, because you have to also deal with those policy alternatives that come up as a result of that. I know it's an easy way out, but I commend the Finance Committee from raising these issues, because the good thing about putting these numbers and pulling these numbers out of the reserve is that we acknowledge the fact that these are real dollars that we should be planning for and budgeting for.
I do think you raise a fairly important point. These are all necessaries, but they're sort of isolated from the revenue side and the revenue package and how you pay for these. If we just focus on these necessary things and we start depleting our reserves without simultaneously looking at revenue options, it just seems that the two need to go together, in my view. I'd have more comfort knowing that, oh, yeah, that's truly a temporary dip in the reserves and not a long-term kick the can down the road sort of way of looking at it. I am troubled by that. I understand the importance, and I think the Finance Committee is correct. These things need to be done, and they will benefit our city over the long term. But we really need to start getting our focus on the revenue package in order to make up for that significant dip in reserves. Is that what you're saying, basically? Exactly. Yeah. Vice Mayor Deasy.
Yes, thank you to everyone for all the work, the Finance Committee and the staff. I wanted to weigh in on the other contract services, and I know that it is nice when things come up to have budget, but given where we are with the deficit, it feels more responsible to me to either eliminate or reduce that. And I think, as we discussed, we can come back for those monies. I'm just thinking this cynically, right? 20,000 times 7, that's $140,000. So that's, right, that could be $20,000 contracts don't have to come, right? They can just be spent.
It's now 10, but.
It's 10? I thought we just, or $25,000?
Thank you. So on a normal circumstances, 25,000, but if it's non-budgeted item, it's actually 10,000 based on the motion the council passed a few months ago. So, but the other thing you need to take into consideration is that if the money's not spent, it goes back into fund balance. So it doesn't disappear.
I guess I'm just saying that I think that I'm a fan of less discretionary funds given where we are. But the thing I really want to talk about briefly is the class and comp study. It raises a concern for me because we're saying two things here in all of this budget stuff, right? Staff compensation and salaries are increasing, which is causing deficit problems. And then staff salaries are not enough. And so my observation has been that these comp studies every city does a new comp study, and then everyone else benchmarks to them. And it seems to me to be going up at a rate that is simply unsustainable, even with new revenue packages. So that is my concern about the class and comp study, particularly if it does not include the entire spectrum of public and private sector. So I don't know when the time is to talk about that, but I'm concerned about doing a class and comp study that is just limited to government agencies. That's what I have to say. And it's, do we need to do it? The $60,000? It's a lot of money, and I think we've done them recently. When was the last one?
The last one was in 2018.
Oh, it was 2018?
Yeah.
And do we have to pay $60,000? What, can
That
you
was
talk about
just-
it a little bit
Yeah, that
more?
was just an estimate. I reached out to one of my neighboring cities that recently did a comp and class RFP, and she received quotes anywhere from $33,000 up to $85,000. So we just kind of estimated a number in the middle, but it could come in less.
And the reason for doing it is, the reason for doing the class and comp study is to, what are we expecting from that?
Well, a couple of things. One is that it typically helps in negotiation, so you have the facts and see what a competition is paying. Second is it, of course, gives you real data on what is reasonable as far as compensation for particular classifications. On the class side of it, as opposed to comp side of it, it really is also important to, if you want to combine positions, become more efficient, look at different business transformation, to use that term, you can change job descriptions to be more aligned with your vision for the future. And so, but that requires a new classification document as well as a compensation study to go with it. I would say that for our purpose at this point in time, A, we have not done it for a while. B, there's been a lot of discussions about compensation, and I think it's a good reason to have facts, and the only way to do that is to have a competent firm that is used to doing these studies to do that. Now, I can also say that, to your point about private sector analysis, we can choose a couple of benchmark positions and do that, rather than doing the whole city, which will be a lot more expensive. So I think that here's my recommendation, is that we conduct the class and comp study based on our normal demographic and discussions with, sorry, not discussions, but benchmarking to other what's called comparable cities, comparable agencies. And then separate from that, we can take a smaller pool of classifications and do a private sector comparison so that you have some comfort. We can do those discussions, particularly on philosophy and those classifications in closed session, again, because those are best handled in closed session, at least initially.
Right. So I guess what I'm proposing is that we look just about every job description has an SOC code. What does that stand for? Standard Occupational Class. So I would like to see us look at all of Napa County with those SOC codes to understand where our compensation is in the broader scale. That's what I would like to see as we go forward with this.
Even if that $65,000 goes up significantly, so, I mean, we have to make some reasonable choices here.
Could the finance, could we do it ourselves?
I would not vote for that. No. That.
Well, I just wanted to raise it as a point of concern, because it seems to me that these things are done, and every city goes up and oh, this city is there, and now we've got to get to 50% or 75%, and I'm concerned about it.
If I can say this.
I mean, Vice Mayor Deasy raises a point. I've been thinking about this for all the years that I have, and it's not a new criticism of how we benchmark and compare ourselves to other jurisdictions, but I haven't personally come up with a better solution. I'm not exactly sure what that is. Mr. Camello? I mean, it's a good point. It's a point well taken, and it is frustrating for me too, because it is this.
It's an arms race.
That was the word I was looking for. Yeah, it's an arms race.
It's a very good description. Yes, indeed. And it's private sector does this too, right? I mean, if you have a winery that's increasing their staff and compensation, others have to compete. That's just nature of the beast. I'll just say that this year, for example, when we worked with our unions and are currently negotiating, the salary data was updated internally, so we can certainly do that. Having run some major studies on class income studies, I can tell you that I have the skill set to do that. But I think that we will be using this data also to talk with our unions and the community, and for that purpose, I think it really makes sense to have an independent, competent firm that does this day in, day out, that does it correctly, because they'll be challenged. And in fact, depending upon which direction we go with the unions, if we have to go to an arbitrator, for example, you need to have the data that is trusted and can be tested. So for those reasons, and particularly since we have not done this since 2018, it would be well worth the investment to have an updated study. Again, the study simply all the study does, it gives you data. You don't have to give people raises. It's the data that you have at your disposal to make informed decisions.
I want to raise one more point that I've been thinking about. In the private sector, I don't know if it's the same kind of a thing, because without the ability to raise taxes, there isn't an ability to just keep up. So I think there's a lot of creativity on recruiting. So because a private business, at some point you can't keep just raising things because you will go out of business, but we don't go out of business in the same way, I guess, maybe unless we declare bankruptcy. So my last point that I've just been thinking about and wanted to raise is that thinking about how we're recruiting and broadening the pool from which we recruit, I think I'm confident could be very helpful in attracting more applicants, rather than, more competition should raise the ability to attract people.
100% accurate.
Other comments or direction? I think, do you feel that you have direction? I think you've made a few little changes here in terms of some of the direction, some to explore, some we're moving more on, like, we agree with that. We haven't really gotten a whole lot of comment yet on the $350,000 contracts. I'm, I can go either way. That is not the most significant issue for me in terms of the big picture. But what say you? I think it is important that we have some consensus on that or direction on that point. The other ones, I think we do have some direction. I'm personally amenable to the staff's recommendations. Others may have different ideas, and if others do have different ideas, as Ms. Deasy has voiced her concerns, others can too. Mr. Camello, yes.
I just want to make sure, are you clear about the direction? Do you want to go to 1 through 17 or whatever, just to play it safe?
I think it might be helpful to go through them, just for
think so, too.
confirmation.
Yeah. So the first three then, first, I guess, 4, we have already implemented. The next 3 is the question that we had. My recommendation to the council still remains that, again, the 150, the 3 of them together, 5, 6, and 7, keeping them there doesn't cause any harm. If we do need to spend it, we would need to come to you for approval anyway. If it doesn't get spent, it goes back into fund balance at the end of the year. So to me, there's no downside to that. Do you want to pause there and have discussion, or how do you want to move on to the next one?
Do others have a view, as Vice Mayor Deasy does, with respect to, or a contrary view to the staff? Mr. Barrett? Or a different view?
I just have an inquiry for Director Kellogg. Do we have actuals from last year? I'm assuming the numbers in the last budget cycle, these 50,000, these are the same, or were they lowered?
They were lowered.
Lowered from?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can tell you, like, one of them in particular, like in the city council budget was at 100,000. We reduced that by half. I believe the city manager one was also reduced by half. And the non-department, I think, was reduced by 2/3 or so.
And so these are the reduced numbers?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Okay. What were the actuals? So you've had this in the past. What's roughly the percentage that was spent? Also curious with our mayor's comment about maybe, hey, if it's 100,000, we just spent 100,000.
Yeah, no, I would say, and part of what has improved our net position and why we have the reserves that we have in place is that we didn't spend all of the budgeted money. We are very prudent, but we do budget conservatively in case things do come up. And so that has yielded the higher reserve levels that we have.
Thank you.
There's also when we talk about, becoming efficient and wanting to be efficient, that's the other piece of it. If the money is there, we would come to you for permission to spend it. Assuming you give us the authority, we would then go and do the work. If it's not, there's also a lot of back-end reconciliation that needs to happen, and we have to put a staff report together, not just for the actual expenditure, but also to track the moving out of reserves. Just so you know, my philosophy, and Director Kellogg has had to deal with this. I don't like to go into reserves but twice a year, during mid-year cycle in January or February, and then during the this time of the year, the budget cycle. And so, because otherwise, having done the budget, having been responsible for it on a very intimate level, it does cause potential errors and calculation issues and time spent on the back end. So that's the other piece of this, that it's also an efficiency issue. The money, like I keep emphasizing, if it's there, doesn't mean it's going to get spent. You need to make that authority, you need to give that authorization. If it's not spent, it goes back into reserves.
After you've said all that, I'm actually comfortable with the position taken by Ms. Deasy. I just don't think it's enough. There's not a real compelling reason to put it in another account at this point for me. So there's two of us, and I don't know if anybody else feels the same way. It's $150,000. You're gonna have to come back to us anyway, irrespective. So I don't see the benefit of sort of budgeting for an unknown. When you have an unknown, it's going to come, and as it comes, you're going to come to us and ask for authority to spend the money. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Do you?
Yeah, I do, because as I explained, there's a lot of work that happens in the back end to go into the reserves and also reconcile it. We don't want to go into reserve but twice a year. That's my opinion. And now, we will do what you want, but I think that's inefficient.
Well, I'm just one person, and I don't know if we have others who are willing to do that. If there's not, then it moves forward. I don't see the other two council members wishing to go against the recommendation, so we'll move forward.
Moving on to.
Are you understanding my point? So your recommendation is approved, right?
Yes.
It's because we don't have another vote here.
Understood.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Item 8, as you said to you, the same logic applies there, but it's in different line items. This is constrained to IT spending alone, and it's not general.
I would also like to mention that we have the next item on the agenda is for a new IT contractor, and they're going to be evaluating our systems in place too, and it would be prudent to have funds set aside for potential upgrades that we might need to do.
Yeah, I'm okay with the staff's recommendation there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 9 is.
And I would encourage my colleagues to, if there's something that is really pressing on your mind or conscious, that now's the time to speak up so we can have that voice. Go ahead, Mr. Camello.
And then item 9, as was mentioned earlier, we're grateful to all the efforts that have been conducted and the contribution of the community. So we probably won't need that item, so we can remove that. Program, as I understand it, we got direction to, what is the direction, to be clear? As you understand it, Ms. Kellogg.
I'm not clear on this one. I think I just understood it as to continue research on it.
It sounds like the research has been made that it is not a rate, it's not revenues based on the rate, it's the penalties and interest are separate from that. So it's not a 218 issue. Well, there's going to be a delay there, obviously, in being able to access those penalties. Are there penalties already set aside in another account in the enterprise funds?
They just go into our overall revenues that collect. And I would like to clarify that the rate study does include some penalties and interest, and also interest earned as part of the calculation for the rates that are developed. In the penalties and interest line, it had on the water side 18,000 estimated that was going to be collected, and then roughly between starting in fiscal year, I think 24 was low as 24,000 in interest earned, and then going up to 90,000 by the end of the rate study period. We have collected in excess of that, so there's a delta there that potentially could be used. But again, it's going to be constantly monitoring it to see if there's sufficient amount to fund that program.
Yeah. Thoughts on the use of penalty and interest for the CARES program?
Sorry, did I miss this? It's usually about $66,000 that we have in, right, and now we know we've got a delay. And that's it? That's it?
That's roughly about the amount that we're on average collecting. We did have a spike in how much we were collecting because we weren't charging past due fees for a while due to the pandemic, which made some inflated numbers there. So we kind of took that into consideration and averaged it out to about estimated between water and wastewater, about 60-some thousand. But to clarify, that's the penalties and interest. There is still also interest earned, which is the other point that Mr. Smithers brought up. And that last year we had about 88,000 in fiscal year 24, and the rate study projected 24,000.
So the total average each year is about?
Again, it depends on the market. We went really low during the pandemic. We were only, collecting like 16,000, but then it can go up over 100,000 when the market's doing well.
Doesn't look like there's anybody who opposes using the penalties and interest and the interest, the separate interest, for the purpose of CARES. All right, on.
Thank you. And then you got the, we of course agree with the
All right.
number
Got that.
11. Let's see, where am I? 12. Again, this is one of those areas where we think that, we agree that we should be potentially collecting. The downside is, of course, that we would need to implement that same policy across all business lines, including our water wastewater customers. And it's something that the council wants to revisit in the future. We can certainly do that at this point. Since we're implementing so many other things, I would rather, our recommendation is to not do so at this time. But we want to come back and study this again in the future.
All right.
And then the wine trail, I think doesn't qualify. Is that still the case? Are we in agreement there? For now, we'll not touch this. We'll book the expenditure for 2025, and we'll deal with it subsequently. We will be bringing a compensation analysis. We don't know what the cost is going to be for this fiscal year. Probably bring it in the last meeting in June. And then, of course, the last three items on the next page, next slide, rather. I wasn't clear where we landed on this.
Anybody a yes on this? I'm a no for the reasons I've already stated, but others may have different opinions. I mean, I agree with the staff's recommendation, at least for now, until we get a better sense of our revenues and revenue package. Mr. Barrett?
I agree with staff and you, Mr. Mayor, on this. I think what this is saying, what essentially we're saying here is that to do this, we'll need a revenue package before the end of 26. And I don't think, I think that's a really good conversation. It's one that none of us want to have, but we should have, because that's where the numbers are driving to it, unless we can find some other cuts that haven't been surfaced to pay for it. So it would be good before any final decision in the budget process. This is a serious deal. These, particularly the CalPERS, is compounding. That's a big number and it's a big deal, and kicking, which we will be doing, these are things we owe, right? And so I appreciate the Finance Committee's recommendation here, and I would like to support it, but I can't support it without, to your point, Mr. Mayor, revenue or from the staff. So,
Other thoughts on that issue? Do you have your direction, Mr. Comello? Yes, sir. All right. Ms. Kellogg, anything else we need to talk about on this item?
No, thank you.
All right, let's take a 10-minute break. All right. We're going to get started again. All right, thank you. Back to the council meeting. We're on to new business. Item 13.1, approval of a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a 3-year professional services agreement with Apex Technology Management for information technology management services in the amount of $250,542 for the first year, $268,542 per year for each subsequent year, for a total not to exceed $787,626 over a 3-year period. Mr. Carmelo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you know, the city has been following its best practice and conducting RFP studies on various products and services. Earlier this year, we conducted a study, as you may know, or may recall, for our municipal advisor services. And this time, we're bringing forward to you staff recommendations on a new contract for IT services. And with that, I'll turn over to Director Kellogg.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. As you know, this is a contract for our IT services. The city has had the same IT contractor since 2014. And so we did issue an RFP in the fall to ensure that we were getting the best price and services for our needs. And due to the small size of our city, it is necessary for us to contract out for these services. The services that are provided would take at least 3 staff to do, so it makes most sense for us to contract out for these services. We did receive a total of 10 proposals. We reviewed the proposals and ranked them. The top 3 firms were invited for an interview. We did have a member of the public participate on our panel of doing the interviews, and Apex came out as the recommended firm to provide these IT services for us. Under the agreement, they're going to be providing us with 24/7 monitoring and support the city systems, remote help desk services for city staff, network infrastructure management and upgrades, cybersecurity monitoring and incident response, server and cloud services support, data backup and disaster recovery, and strategic IT planning and reporting. In exchange for signing a 3-year agreement with them, they did waive the one-time setup cost, and they gave us a discount in the first year. When they do come on board, they are going to do a full analysis and look for ways to reduce our costs overall for IT services. And I would like to invite George to the podium to give a small presentation about his firm. Thank you.
Before you go, just one question before it escapes me. I'm glad you had somebody from the public. May I assume that that person has a technology IT background?
Yes, has a very extensive technology IT background. So it was John from the Parks and Rec Commission, actually, who sat on that panel.
All right. It was a question I wanted to ask, and I'm glad we did that. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Appreciate the opportunity to present. And my name's George Pasadakis. I'm with Apex Technology Management. I've been there, actually July will be 15 years, so quite a while. And I just have a few slides to cover about Apex in general, and then specifically our focus on the municipal government IT services space, as well as cybersecurity. So, like I mentioned, Apex has been around since 1991, and all this detail is in the RFP that's included in your packet. So this is just some high-level extracts from there. The municipal government space is our largest vertical market, so the most clients and the most seats, which we call devices, servers, and workstations under management. And obviously, with all the cybersecurity incidents that have been happening in the last 8 or 9 years, we saw a huge need to step it up in the cybersecurity realm. So we created, at that time, an advanced cybersecurity division. It was called Digital Umbrella. And that side of our business was just growing tremendously. We were both doing assessments, which is security and risk assessments to determine an organization's cyber hygiene, where they were, where they needed to be, and then doing penetration testing. So using the same tools and techniques that the bad guys use to try and expose vulnerabilities within an organization so they can resolve those and eliminate the risk. That division just grew so rapidly. About 4 years ago, we spun them off into a separate operating company called Cyber 74. You'll see that in the RFP in a few locations, and their 100% focus is cybersecurity. So They offer a lot of offensive and defensive security solutions. Our goal, our first goal and primary goal when we, if we onboard with the city, would be get you to a safe, secure, and stable standpoint. So we'll talk a little bit more about that and the analysis or technology assessment that Mandy mentioned as well. As I mentioned, we have about 5,000 endpoints under management. These are servers or workstations. We have a huge focus, which we'll show in the next couple of slides, on the municipal government space. With that, our technicians need to be extra security, background checked, and certified to work on sensitive systems like the police departments and fire departments have, public safety. So they have to go through what's called CJIS, which is the FBI's Criminal Justice Information System. They have to get certified in order to access those systems. So we have over 20 full-time technicians that have that certification on board that will be working within your organization on the police department systems and those types of things. As Mandy mentioned, we have a 24/7 emergency support option, so we will be doing proactive monitoring of all the equipment. If something were to go down, a firewall, an internet connection, a server, critical server, we're going to get an alert 24/7. Our team's going to respond to that immediately and start working on that situation to try and minimize any issues from that. A lot of the proactive alerts we get are just general maintenance things. You're going to be running low on a server drive space, so we want to know that as early as possible so we can free up some space or add additional space before it crashes. We're really well known for our customer service. If you Google Apex Technology Management and look at our Google reviews, you'll see lots of all 5-star reviews directly from feedback from our clients in there. Go to the next slide. These are the core services that we offer. So our number one thing is what the city of St. Helena was putting the RFP out for, which is managed IT services. So this is handling all of the day-to-day operations of your existing IT environment. It's also adding a VCIO, virtual CIO layer, that is going to work with the city on where are you at today, where do we think you should be best in class, how do we get there, building an IT roadmap, providing strategic consulting, bringing in ideas that we have from our other municipal government clients that we see are working well, and just really providing professional IT management for the city. We do the advanced cybersecurity, which we mentioned, and then the technology assessments. And then we do have an outsourcing and IT consulting side for just coming in for specific projects. Next slide. And I apologize, their names didn't make it on this slide, but we did. This is something unique to Apex, or as far as we're aware, no other managed service provider is this focused on the municipal government space. We have formed a public sector strategic advisory council, and Mark Coopwood is the former police chief of Beverly Hills. Raina Schwartz is the second one there. She was the former city manager of the city of Clayton, worked with San Pablo. And then the third one is Beth Johnson. She's the former police chief of Novato, police captain in Martinez. And then the last one there is Dana Homer. She's the former treasurer and tax collector of Tehama County. So we formed this group to help guide us in bringing innovative and value-added solutions and spending municipal government's budgets responsibly. So we meet quarterly to talk about trends within the municipal government IT space. For example, currently we're working on a lot of ideas surrounding AI. How can that be best utilized within a municipal government agency and spend at a reasonable level? So we meet quarterly. They review our plans on how we go to market within the municipal government space. So it's a really valuable add-on for our organization. I do need to let you know, Raina Schwartz, the second one on there, is resigning. She actually is coming out of retirement and going to work as the full-time finance director for the city of Albany. So we are recruiting to replace her. And these are all former public sector employees, so there's no conflict of interest within our organizations. Next slide. We're really proud of what we've been able to do within the government space. So you guys have probably heard of J.D. Power that rates car satisfaction and those kind of things. There's a couple of watchdog agencies on our space, the managed service provider space. One of them is that top left, the channel E2E. They do a top 100 vertical market managed service provider list every year. And we've made that list in their top 5 for government and education the last 5 years running. So we're real proud of that. They really look at how we go to market within the municipal government space, how we manage our clients, how happy our government clients are, how fast we're growing within the space, those type of things. And then that bottom left one, it's another organization called Channel Futures, and they actually awarded us Managed Service Provider of the Year out of 55,000 national MSPs in 2023, so we're real proud of that. And that's, again, a very rigorous application that we have to go through and get checked. And then we're in the CRN, Computer Reseller News, Managed Service Provider Top 500 list globally. And then on the security side, CMMC is the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. So we do have some Department of Defense clients that, of course, need high levels of cybersecurity. So we're what's called an RPO, Registered Provider Organization, to help guide them to achieve that the certification they need to continue to contract with the government. Next slide. And we have lots of standard IT certifications you can see here from Microsoft, Cisco, Dell, all the major players. We're Microsoft Gold partners, so we're in their top tier of partners nationally. So we can bring all the Microsoft solutions, cloud architectures, and those types of things to bear for the city of St. Helena along with our other clients. Next slide. Here's a few client examples. We have about 105 managed clients. You can see here lots of these are municipal governments within the state of California. That's our total focus on the managed service side is cities within California with populations of 50,000 and under. Most of these we manage all of the IT 100%. Maybe 3 or 4 of these we do co-managed IT, so they have 1 or 2 IT staff members, and then we come alongside them and fill in where they have gaps to have a complete IT function. We do a lot of special districts, like you can see, transportation, water, wastewater, parks and rec, so we're very familiar with working with government agencies, the budgeting cycle, potential grants that are out there, those kind of things. And then on the security side with Cyber 74, you can see we have many cybersecurity specific certifications out there, from penetration testing, ethical hacking, all of those types of things. So all of those will be leveraged for work with the city. And then specifically within the RFP and the pricing and the services we're providing, we have what's called Apex Security Essentials. So it's a bundled package. We don't write our own cybersecurity software and utilities. We use best in class. But we think these 6 areas are key functions that an organization needs to have in place to maintain their good cyber hygiene. And if you have cyber insurance, they are usually requiring most or all of these anyway. The first is a password manager, so we recommend strong passwords. You don't reuse them at more than one site, those types of things. It's very hard to do without saving that in an Excel file or reusing your password. So we give you an enterprise-grade password manager where each employee within the city can have a secure password vault. It works in a sharing capacity too, so if you have 2 or 3 people that need to share a credential, there's a secure way to do that. So everybody will have access to that. We provide security and awareness training. One of the biggest entry points for the cyber criminals is compromising an end user with phishing emails, phone calls in that spoof caller ID. So we have regular security and awareness training that will go out to all staff. You guys will get a report that says, how's everybody doing? You know, when we do phish testing, so we send out fake phishing emails, and you'll see the first time we send one out, 47% of the staff click on it and 15% put their credential in or something. And you start to see that come down over the months once we deploy it, when people start getting the training and they know what's going on and what to look for and be cautious for. Multi-factor authentication. This is something you want to implement on your key systems, where when you log in, there's also another factor that hits either a cell phone or a small token we can provide to confirm you're actually the user that's intending to log in and not a bad guy. managed detection response. So this is a new generation of antivirus software. We're providing one from SentinelOne, and it looks for not only known malware, it looks for behaviors of malware. So when these things start executing on the network, it looks for that behavior and alerts us and shuts it down automatically. That's backed by a 24/7 security operations center. So if something happens in the middle of the night, we're going to get that alert and take action. And then dark web monitoring. If something does happen, we're constantly monitoring for the data from the city of St. Helena to see if it's been posted on their dark web so we can figure out what's going on with that. And then the last thing is ring fencing. This is what's called zero trust architecture. So basically we take the approach that nothing can execute on your network that we don't know about. So if somebody downloads a new utility or clicks on an email with an attachment that starts executing malicious code, it blocks it, gives a nice message to the user, says this is unknown software, would you like it to be checked out? If they say yes, it alerts us, we evaluate it. If it's clean and usable and meets your policies, then we whitelist it so it can run. So this blocks a lot of the common attack paths. So all of that will be deployed during onboarding to help ensure the security of the city. And then lastly, technology assessment that Mandy was mentioning. This is a look across the entire IT infrastructure. So we look at it from 4 viewpoints: inventory, sustainability, reliability, and security. And we come up with a little report card with red, yellow, greens. And basically we look in detail. It's a questionnaire that we have that we go through. It's physical inspections. It's some utilities that we run on the network, internal and external vulnerability assessments. And then from there, we build our recommendations that are prioritized, and we work with your VCIO and the city on an IT roadmap. These are the things that we recommend. Some of them we may say are critical. We recommend you implement them right away. Others can be worked into your budget over the next 2 or 3 years. But it's a really good overall look so we know where you're at today and where we recommend that you go over the next few years. These are some of the areas we include in the technology assessment, so I won't go through all of these, but it's definitely a comprehensive look. That's it. And I'm happy to take any questions on Apex, the RFP response, services, anything from anybody in the council.
Just wanted to jump in real quick before you get into discussion that the contract is anticipated to start June 1st, so we have a 1-month overlap for transition with our current IT contractor. And then we also do have a notation on the contract that's attached to, that's as an attachment on the staff report. There's actually some amendments that were made that didn't make it into that contract that you see before you, so we just want to make note of that to you, and I'll turn it over to City Attorney Walsh.
So there were 2 amendments that Apex requested that didn't make it in the contract. The first is they have a provision, the waiver of the onboarding fee. They asked for a requirement that in the event that we terminate the contract within the first 12 months, that we would actually pay that onboarding fee. It was, I think, $13,250. But if we continued beyond the first year for the 3-year term of the contract, or any time beyond the first 12 months, then that would be completely waived. And then the second provision is a little more substantive from a legal point of view. They asked for a mutual indemnity provision. So generally in our consulting contracts, indemnity means that they will essentially hold us harmless for any legal liability stemming from any kind of acts and omissions related to the contract. Usually we make that one-sided requirement because our consultants generally act independently of our staff and they're providing us with the service. In this instance, they requested a mutual indemnity, which would say that if our staff were negligent in kind of some issue that came up that created liability, that they would not be required to indemnify us. We would be required to indemnify them. Normally, we don't agree with that because of the nature of these services and the fact that there's kind of an interaction between the 2 parties. And I think there is probably more of a risk of negligence on our part than there would be in typical situations. I think it's a reasonable request from them. So I would ask that if you decide to approve the contract, that you do that with the additions of the waiver of the fee, and then the repayment provision in the event that we terminate within the first 12 months. And secondly, that we be authorized to incorporate a mutual indemnity clause subject to my approval. And I would draft in consultation with the APEC something that I believe would adequately protect the city. I'm happy to answer any questions on those 2 points.
All right, thank you for those clarifications regarding the contract. I noted the request in the proposal, and so we got to those major issues. I did see the contract and knew that there was some more language that needed to be put in those. I'll defer now to Mr. Barrett. Did you have a question?
Yes. Can you clarify, and I don't know if this question is for the gentleman or Director Kellogg. This does not include the library, correct? Those computer resources are under the Solano County Library group, or yes, it does include it?
It does include the infrastructure at the library. So they actually have their own server, and there's a number of workstations over there, so they would be responsible for all of that management as well.
Okay. Second, can you explain what isn't covered here? It looks to be a very aggressive contract. I'm assuming we have 10 servers today and only 10 servers. And are those on-prem, or are they based at a co-location, or where are these?
They are.
Oh, yes, on-premise, sorry.
I was going to, they are on-prem. Yes, they are on-prem. We do have cloud managed services as well, too. Yeah, this is somewhat of a bare bones contract. It's for our management services that we need. Normally what we do is in the budget development process, we work with our IT contractor on what projects might come up or needs that we see, potential equipment that's going to fail, and we include that in the contract. Obviously, we didn't have the opportunity to do that with Apex, and we are trying to stay within a smaller budget than this upcoming year. So what we've tried to do is build it in a way that they can make recommendations to us that we can bring back to you, and then you as a council can decide if you want to move forward with them, and we'll prioritize them by risk.
And another question and sorry, I could lose some folks, but we can explain it. So the operating systems on the servers, is part of this contract, and it wasn't clear, keeping those, so if it's on Windows Server, say 2016, and it goes in a cycle, it goes out of support, or sure, you can see it going out of support, does this include keeping server operating system databases refreshed, and the same on the workstations, right? If you've got Windows 10, Windows 11, or are those extra charges?
So the way we handle that is we do life cycle management. That's what we call that. So we know the EOL, or end of life, of all of these operating systems, and it includes warranties on the servers where we want to have overnight parts and those kind of things to keep everything running. And your VCIO plans that out in your budget. So in the case of Windows 10, which goes end of life, I think, end of September this year, that would have been in your budget to replace those with Windows 11 systems. Some can be upgraded, some might need to be replaced. That's an additional cost, so we scope that out and say that's a project because it takes a lot to migrate versions of software and those kind of things. So that's something that's planned out and put into the budget for approval. And usually it's years in advance. We know these dates from Microsoft and others well in advance. So,
when we order a new system, right? So there's a system refresh. Director Kellogg, I'm assuming it's a 4-year refresh rate, or is it 5?
We've been as they break, but we do actually try to look, and as they start to hit that 5-6 year mark, that's when we're prioritizing them for replacement.
Okay.
Yes, so for desktops, laptops, those kind of things, included in this contract would be 2 days a week of an on-site technician. So if it's something they can handle, they would do that as part of the existing contract amount. If it's something we need to bring our professional services team in, like the server upgrades, that would be an additional cost. But the hardware would always be a cost to the city, right?
Directly to
And
the
we
city.
can, we're gold partners with Dell, so we get really good pricing, and you could buy that through us or whatever channel you get the best deal on. But yeah.
So my macro concern here, and it relates to the budget rather than Apex services, which seems in line for the price, is, are we underestimating our IT needs from a budget perspective? In essence, sort of force budgeting the IT components in order to meet the moment or the perceived moment with our situation?
I would say that in comparing to what we were currently receiving and how much we were spending for equipment, by having that $50,000 that we talked about earlier, that should meet the needs that we have in this upcoming year. The only concern would be is that they're going to take a deep dive into our environment, and there may be things that were sitting there not addressed that we didn't know about. And that I cannot say how much that would cost.
Understood.
And there will be things that have an associated risk with them if we don't tackle them.
And that's really our main goal with that technology assessment, is to identify that and get you ahead of that. I don't know in the past what the current provider was providing you as far as those management level reports on where you should be going and what you should be budgeting, or just when something happens, they say it's going to cost 50 grand to fix it. So we want to take the surprises out. We work with a lot of municipal government agencies, nonprofit health cares, those types of things. We just can't spring these costs on somebody and expect them to come up with the money. So that's the goal, is get professional IT management in here that we can give you that runway out into the future.
Another thing I would like to point out is they are going to look for cost-saving measures as well, too, that could potentially offset some of those other needs. One example is that we still have desk phones. There might be an opportunity to get rid of that equipment and not have to maintain it anymore and reduce some costs there.
Yeah, many times we come up during that assessment, we can consolidate from 10 servers down to 6, right, and reduce some costs or move some to the cloud where you won't have that hardware cost of replacing during the cycle. So that's all stuff we look at.
You had mentioned, and I'm maybe a little confused about what is actually in the contract, but you had mentioned and spent a fair amount of time talking about Cyber 74 and those services there. As I understand it, those are not actually part of this contract, right?
Correct. We do have some overlap, like policy. If you don't have cybersecurity policies and procedures, we can bring those in from Cyber 74 as part of our agreement. But if you need a specific in-depth penetration test for your cyber insurance once a year, then that would be something we scope out with Cyber 74 at additional cost. We do have within our contract and the Apex side a security specialist that's managing that Apex Security Essentials and doing baseline security and vulnerability scanning on a regular basis, but in-depth, you want the best assessment possible. That's going to be from the Cyber 74 team.
Yeah.
And
I guess my point there, and you may have a different take about it, and maybe Mr. Merrick does too, but my sense is, and maybe this is not the industry, that penetration testing should just be a sort of an automatic, that is part of the ultimate contract and not an add-on. It just seems like that is such a serious part of your business, and that it could save so many headaches. It's super expensive.
yeah, it's not tremendously expensive. It wasn't in the RFP, so we didn't want to include that and price ourselves out if nobody else was doing it. So that's something we could look at bundling in down the line, or we would get a better price by having both Apex Managed Services and Cyber 74 services together. But
you have to get ahead of your competition and just do that.
Yeah, we also going to win some deals once in a while.
I understand that.
Keep hiring
All right.
people, but
right.
no, I see your point, and that's why we have those. The core services are those 6 layers that we put up there in the security essentials.
All right.
So,
Just one question out of curiosity. I assume, well, I shouldn't assume, was Marin IT one of the proposers?
Yes, and we interviewed them as well.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Other comments or questions? We'll, Vice Mayor Deasy, or I'll look for a motion to, but do you have a comment, Vice Mayor Deasy?
do have a quick question. So the strategic IT planning and reporting, I think you've described it a lot, but do some cities come to you for like process automation kinds of things, or is that out of completely someone else?
Usually on, like, if you're talking about the application side, like Tyler Financials or something, going in and looking at a workflow within a department, that's not typically something that we do. We're more focused on, if it's hosted on-premise, making sure the infrastructure is capable of running it well, it being secure, and people getting to the login prompting, be able to log in. And then from there, typically you would have a contract with Tyler or whoever that vendor is on using their application. So the answer is we don't have application-specific specialists within the applications.
Thank you. And sorry if it was a amateur question, but I appreciate it.
Good question.
Okay, I'm going to look for a motion to adopt the recommended
Excuse me, Mayor.
resolution.
We didn't open public comment.
We do. Is there public comment? I apologize. My assumptions were that nobody was going to comment on this. Open public comment, closed public comment. I apologize for that. Thank you, Madam Clerk, for keeping me on task. Yeah, I'll look for a motion, and note in the motion that we'll need to also include the changes that Mr. Walsh discussed, recited regarding the contract provisions, the new amended contract provisions.
I'll make the motion to adopt what the staff recommendation along with our attorney's amendments to the contract.
All right. There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Spataroto,
Yes.
Barrick,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Deasy,
Yes.
and Mayor Doran.
Yes. Welcome aboard.
All right.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Good
Looking
luck.
forward
Thank
to
you. Have a good trip
working with
back.
the city.
Thank you. All right. All right. We're on to item 13.2, direction regarding implementation of the DG installation at Skate Park. Mr. Camello, let you introduce the item or the staff member.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll have, there she is. Oh, thank you. I was like, where you go? Deputy City Manager Leslie Milton described make a quick presentation, but just to give you a couple of comments before that, we have an opportunity to install a couple of different products as options. One of them was a DG. The other is pavers. Staff recommended and implemented partially the DG option at this point, and we'll, I'm sure, have a discussion about it. With that, DCM Milton.
Good evening, City Council.
Welcome.
Very excited to be here tonight and excited to get some direction. So next slide, I'll give you a little background on this project. So last May in 2024, the Skate Park Committee had approached me, and I actually took over the Public Works Parks operations a year ago. So this was probably within my first week of being in charge of parks. So the committee said they wanted us to turn on the irrigation at the skate park. Now, the skate park had gone through quite a transition. We were in, during the heightened drought period, we had turned off all water to parks, including the skate park. And then during COVID, there really was just a lack of maintenance citywide on a lot of our parks. And so we met out at the skate park, and they said, "Can you please just turn on the irrigation?" And I said, "No." And I looked at him and I said, "Oh, we can do better than that." That's basically what happened. I knew if we just turned on the irrigation, then weeds were going to grow. Then we were going to have to manage the weeds. And I just feel like we could do better for our community and for the and for youth. One of the things that I really feel pretty proud of in this last year, we've been able to help rehabilitate 6 different parks in the city in the last year. So we did Lyman Park, pretty significant effort. Miley Park, we just redid the field. We did pathways. We did trees. We did all sorts of landscaping. Menin Park, I don't know if any of you have been to Menin Park recently. the best place to have a picnic in the city. It is charming. It's the cutest pollinator park we have. The Elm Tunnel, we did all those replantings out there, and also the front of the and the library. So we've been really trying to refocus efforts on improving our parks and landscapes because we know those are community spaces for our public. So, and I do appreciate, I want to just absolutely give a shout out to the skate park committee and all of the community members that helped create this. I was uninformed that the skate park was funded primarily through private donations. And it was a grassroots effort of community members who got it built. And I think it's such an amazing addition to the Crane Park collaborative that we have out there, and it serves a unique population. So, so we worked together. We had several meetings out there. We talked about different options and things that we could do. This is an unbudgeted project, and so I said, well, I think I can shift some funds and operations to try to be able to make it better than just turning on the irrigation. So we came up with but also there was conversations we were having with the Parks and Recreation Commission about prioritization of which park gets to be rehabilitated next. So that was a very large conversation that we had with Parks and Rec Commission. So we did decide to take this to the commission, talked about a park prioritization strategy. The major recommendation that they had was that if we are going to be focusing efforts on one specific park, other parks would not suffer, and services through the entire community would not suffer. So we tried to keep that in mind. And the goal with all the rehabilitation is to make sure they're sustainable, drought-tolerant plants, that they have lower maintenance when we're done. So with the Lyman Park model, as we call it, it actually takes less time for us to maintain it now than it did before because of the way that we did the landscaping, the pruning, and the types of plants that we've put in there. And then also stay within the existing budget. So next slide, please. That's just some background. The work that we completed, I don't know if you've been out there recently or not, we did repair all the irrigation and it's fully functional. We added over 200 drought-tolerant plants. We had 4 different varieties we ended up adding out there. And then we additionally, for the meantime, because they're small plants that are going to grow, and then create more of a turf. In the meantime, because of the sustainability effort and the evaporation, we do have a gorilla hair kind of ground cover that helps keep in the water irrigation. So that's just a one-time thing. There were new trees that were planted for future shade, and that was fully funded by the skate park committee. They actually paid for all of the trees and the contractor to install all of those. So this was a great public-private partnership that we really kind of put together. And then also there were requests to enhance the picnic areas and the entrances. So lots of discussions about this, again, trying to stay within budget. And then these conversations we were having throughout the fall with the planned implementation in March. And with the new operational changes that we had, anything over specific dollar values had to go to the council, and so we stayed within our budget. And we did purchase a second picnic table, and we installed decomposed granite on the picnic pad area. And so their future enhancements are also coming. We're coordinating with the Boy Scouts to do one of the entrances as well, as a project that they're doing. Next slide, please. Okay, and so if you'll just click through this is our irrigation photo. This is how tiny those plants are. Those are the new trees that were planted. We have some water bladders on each of those trees to make sure that they stay hydrated through the summer months. This is one of the final project pictures. And you can see it was weeds 3 feet tall, but we were trying to enhance the aesthetic value of it. Okay, I think. All right, so this is a picture, and I actually went out there today and took this picture. This is the decomposed granite. Now, I want to point out that there is a sealant that goes on the top of this that we have purchased. It's like a glue. And this material is used in state parks. This is used in many, many, many areas. It's a common surface treatment that's used in park and public pathways and walkways and things like that. And when you put the sealant on it, it keeps the small pieces compact, but the concern and the considerations of the state park committee, they're concerned that this material can get onto the skate park and then it can create a hazard. And so, next slide. So there was a request, and this is why in the in the staff report recommendation to the Parks and Rec Commission, we put in there either decomposed granite or pavers, because at the time we were in the middle of the downtown sidewalk repair project, and we didn't know if we would have we had pavers that we had purchased a long time ago, and we used those to repair the downtown sidewalks. We used those to repair the pathways at Biley Park and other parks in the city, and so the project downtown completed. We have maybe 2 half pallets left. They're sitting out at Crane Park. Anyone who walks by can see them. But there's not enough to complete the pad, and I don't feel it because they're out of manufacturing. It's not operational recommendation to use those pavers, and we don't think there's enough anyway. It was unbudgeted, so we did get, I'll skip to cost in a minute. It's a common and effective practice. This material is, I provided City Manager Camello several examples of this. Not saying it's the perfect one, but it was the one that we have the budget for and what we chose. And from our perspective, it is a safe and cost-effective material. Is it ideal? Maybe not, but it is an option that we considered. Next slide, please. So in response to the requests that we've gotten to replace them with pavers, we did seek multiple quotes because that is our purchasing policy regulations and requirements. And because we do have to pay prevailing wage for this project, the costs that we receive are between $22,000 and $39,000. So we reached out to probably 6 or 7 different organizations to try to give us bids, and we were only able to get 3 back, and these were the costs. And I just wanted to make sure that you understood that. And so we don't have that currently budgeted. Happy to facilitate if this is something that the council wants, and that's, next slide please, that's where we're at right now. Staff is willing to facilitate whatever direction the council wants. As it is right now, anything over $10,000 or anything unbudgeted comes to the council for approval. Want to facilitate that. We can keep it as is. There's no additional cost to that. We already have the material that we have to seal it and to glue it down. We are going to use it in other park pathway projects as well. So it's something that we use regularly. Or the city council can allocate money for this project. Another option, I just want to throw that out there. I know that Ms. Smithers had suggested that she had gotten a quote for $7,000. We could do a public-private partnership with this as well. We're happy to facilitate that with independent contractors as long as they have the proper indemnification. But just wanted to get some direction from the council and happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you for that comprehensive report. Initial clarifying questions? Ms. Milton? Okay. This is a initial clarifying question?
Yes.
Ms. Berg? Okay.
Clarifying question. It wasn't clear to the skate park committee, are they endorsing the staff report?
They were at the Parks and Recreation Commission where we listed both options, and they did not speak against it. But I do believe that they are dissatisfied with the existing condition of the decomposed granite.
Okay, thank you.
And just for the record, none of them have spoken to me directly, but they have through other people. But no one has reached out to me directly. So I don't know.
I did not hear about the $7,000 proposal. What is the substance of that? What does that include? Are you talking about Pam Smithers, who made that presentation? I think there's at least 3 Smithers ladies in St. Helena, including the little one.
Miss Pam Smithers, but again, this was not information provided to me directly. It was through other staff members.
Okay.
So I can't speak
well,
to the
maybe
details of the proposal.
Comment may elicit more detail there. I'll open the matter for public comment. I know probably some of you are here for the matter, and we'll have a discussion. Anybody wishing, we have received written comment. At least I've received a couple letters. Anybody wishing to speak on the issue? All right. And welcome. You might want to put that mic down just a tad.
How's this?
I know you're one of the Smithers.
Okay.
Okay.
Stephanie Smithers, I'm a Parks and Rec Commissioner. I come here today not on behalf of the commission, but on behalf of as a commissioner. The staff report on my couch on Thursday, saw this come in the evening, holiday weekend. It was really hard to connect with my peers ahead of today's meeting. I did send some backstory to council members, just highlighting some facts that I didn't feel like were made very clear in the staff report, a history of when the meetings were had and discussions. And so there's some folks from the skate committee that I think would be able to speak best as to what the proper materials are to be used at the skate park. I'm not a skateboarder. I can see issues with instability in decomposed granite and wheels. That just seems sort of apparent to me, especially if it's not stabilized with the material. Some concerns that I had as a commissioner was that we have been working really closely with Public Works on this project since last year. On May 5th, we received public comment from a member here this evening that said it was unsafe, they were unpleased with it. The response from Public Works at the time was that they believed pavers were going to be installed. I followed up via email on May 7th and was told internal conversations, the pavers were not budgeted, please hold. Nothing since. So it's just a little frustrating as a commissioner, like we've been in communications, why didn't this come back to the commission? I think there's a lot of creative solutions we probably could have come up with. Could the space be smaller? Another thing to highlight, the pavers, yes, Ms. Milton is correct that the staff report originally said DG or pavers. The staff report also explicitly lined out that the final plan with all elements would get approved by the skate park committee. So no formal plan was actually presented to the committee. I think there was some discussion, but they weren't saying, we can't afford the pavers, we're doing the DG. What do you think? I think it was loosely discussed. I was under the impression there wasn't a formal presentation with final elements, but it is a he said, she said, so I'm not gonna get into that by any means. The budget in the original staff report didn't include a purchase for stabilizing material for DG either. So there's an argument of like, there was a decision to purchase stabilizing liquid for DG, which was not included in the original staff report to the Parks and Recs Commission, which was, I believe, in November. So I would have requested this item come back to the commission. We've been very involved this whole time. I think park staff do an incredible job. We're really proud of our parks. Again, the skate park committee had made a very few requests in their public comment in September to the commission. They actually requested this not be a project. Public Works staff did come back and say, we'd like to make this a rehabilitation project. We believe it's going to take 6 weeks starting in mid-January. It's now well over 6 months. I understand things come up. Regarding the park prioritization, in the November meeting, we did make very clear that the skate park and Jacob Miley Park were the priorities. Menon Park was not a priority at all, and yet Menon Park did receive rehabilitation, which seems to have delayed the skate park project. And regarding some other sort of clarifying is Menon Park is intended to be a pollinator park. That's why the park was gifted to the city of St. Helena. At our last May 5th commission meeting, I notified Public Works that I received a complaint from the community that no pollinator plants were planted in the recent rehabilitation. So I had requested a follow-up because it is a pollinator park, and so we should take care of these assets that have been given to us by really generous community members. So that's my request, is I think the commission should have had a chance to review this before coming to the council tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you
10
for those comments. All right, any other comments? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment and bring it back. Well, so folks,
Hello.
let's move.
My name is Marissa. Oops, here we go.
Welcome.
Thank you. Welcome.
I saw a reference to you in some of the correspondence about the DG and the wheels.
Oh,
Yeah.
excellent.
But
Yes.
go ahead.
Yes. I'm Marissa Noakes, and my child is an avid skateboarder at the skateboarder park, and we have enjoyed it and so much. And I don't know if you know this, but among skaters, it's the second best skate park in California. There's only one that's better, and that's the Vans, next to the corporate Vans. They have an amazing skate park that they gave to their city, which they decided to do. So that's great. But the problem is we were given this, we got there, and there's this terrible material on the west entrance that is the most used entrance, and under the guise of this rehabilitation, we have just seen work and work and work, but it has been turned less beautiful, less safe, and it's almost like there wasn't a distinct plan. What they had was just fine. We used to walk in from the west, there was very hard matted dirt that we walked in. It didn't get stuck in your shoes, it didn't get stuck in your tires. Right now, one of the best features of the park can't even be used unless you bring a broom every single time. But the material, there's all different types of granite, PG, this broken granite, there's all different types. The type that was chosen for this project is absolutely the worst because it's like almost 3 different sizes of granite and salt. And so where there's places where the kids are supposed to go down on ramps, there's this fine, fine sand. And that is just the worst thing you can have in a skate park. There's sand, rocks, any material that's going to cause stoppage. The problem is this is the exact same color as the cement. So not only was it chosen for color wrong, so it's incredibly dangerous. Like, I mean, we're taking brooms, and the tennis courts has all these nice brooms and stuff, and it just seems that there wasn't the thought and caring that goes into other parks. Like our tennis courts look like a country club, and basically the plants that were at the skate park were all drought tolerant. They were like those, they were very just fine, and then there was nice rocks around it. Now there's this, what did you call it, gorilla mulch or something? It's horrific. But if you go into the skate park, you can see all the sand and all the granite coming out, and it's on both sides. It doesn't stay contained. I understand it is supposed to be glued, but that also causes a problem because it makes a very slippery thing. Skate shoes are completely flat. They're not like running shoes. They don't have any things, so that's also a problem. So I really think that you should think of maybe like this granite in a skate park is literally like having glass at the public pool. I mean, it's that bad. It's just the worst thing. And we would really like, even if you had just a small path, it doesn't have to be the whole thing with pavers, just a big enough path to get across this awful sand. It was fine how it was before, and I know we can't go back, but to take something that was totally fine and to put something in that made it not fine is not so good. So, and I understand right now the city's in a major problem with the budget, and I just think you really should consider this for the kids because it's not safe, and it's just terrible, you know, that this is what happened. So,
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. I wasn't going to speak, but Paul, you asked the question if the skate park committee raised safety concerns. The staff report that's printed for this agenda item states it twice, that there are safety concerns.
I actually did not ask.
Oh, someone did.
Ask that question, but yeah, it was asked.
Sorry.
That's right. That's right.
Secondly, I suggest a third option be speaking with Parks and Rec, bringing them back in. They've been very successful in other avenues, and ignoring them in the process that they've already went through just undermines them, which I don't think is right. The second option, to proceed with the stabilized DG. You use examples of pathways in state park public spaces in local wineries. None of them have wheels. None of them use scooters, roller skates, or skateboards. So to implement that here with a skate park for a totally different use seems like an easy way out. And again, safety is a massive concern. And it's a utilized park with little kids and parents, and I think if you go ahead and adopt the stabilization, ignoring the safety claims, you're doing the whole community a disservice. And once being on Parks and Rec for 2 terms, I say kick it back to them and let them finalize it and maybe bring it to you or do it on their own. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for the comment.
I didn't think I was going to talk, but I am. Mark Smithers. I wanted to clarify.
Have you been recruited, Mr. Smithers?
Huh?
Have you been recruited?
Yeah. I wanted to clarify a couple of things that were said. there was a reference to a pallet and a half that was at Crane Park, I think behind the Head Start building, that was not enough pavers to do the job for the 280 square feet that is there. There's 3 pallets of pavers at the corporate yard that have been there for 15 years. So that's, I think, where the skate park, it's not really a committee, a few people that built the original skate park. That's where so we know we have the pavers that can actually do the job. And the $7,000 that was quoted, that came from Mario Traverso, who contracted out and did the downtown paver replacement for $25. The contractor, and that they included the pavers as well, at $25 a square foot. So when you do the math, $25 a square foot times 280 square feet is $7,000. So I just want to make sure you're aware of those few items there, and because it doesn't really sound like the 25 or 30, and really probably the best thing is maybe just go back and figure this whole thing out and work with the Park and Rec Department and come to a better conclusion and maybe better facts. Okay.
Gordy Adams, ex-mailman and skateboarder for 55 years, something like that. And so all the logistics, everything they've been talking about is not what's on my mind most of the time, because I run skate camps there every Friday after school, and I do have to go there with a broom and clean it up. And another aspect of this, and I'm just first learning about the cleaning it up and having it be sealed. So that part is, if that happens, awesome. That would be great. It looks fine if it's sealed, if that's a possibility. But when I first arrived last Friday, there was a bunch of kids in there who weren't skateboarding. They were on bicycles, and they had remote control cars running around, and they were spreading all of that everywhere. It just wasn't being brought in with shoes. It was brought in, and it's a lot. And we were kind of promised in the beginning that it was going to be more fine, like the bocce courts, which I also know how fine those bocce courts are. So if that can be solved, that's great. But I can't be the person that with what they're talking about. That's more important to the big picture, which you guys are all part of. I was just going purely with experience, and little rocks do make people fall a lot. So kids, adults, everywhere. So that's just my own emotional response to what's been talked about tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mailman. All right. I want to make sure everybody's had a chance to express their opinions to the council before I close the public comment. I will close the public comment. Good comments, actually. A lot of interesting information. I do think it's important for us to the public needs to hold its government accountable. No doubt about it. We are always trying to get better at what we do. I think one of the things I will compliment you on is you've been very respectful. It's not easy for staff to put themselves out trying to do something to benefit our community, and not everything goes perfectly. I want to take the time to commend our staff for taking the initiative to make things better for our community. There are a lot of communities who can't say that. It's low-lying, no resistance, let's just kind of keep our heads down and not try things. And so we should think about it in different ways. It's good to have this conversation. I certainly am not an expert in this area. I mean, I was just joking to myself. My first thought was just close the entrance. Obviously, everybody can go to the other entrance and problem solve, but I know that obviously that's not the case. I think we'll get to the right answer. Public safety and safety of children and safety of adults, safety of everybody is paramount for Paul Doring and our council and our staff. So I think let's just continue to collaborate, work together. I know there's a lot of opinions that have been raised, and there may be counter arguments to that. I want to try to avoid some of that. I want to just get to the path of success. Make it no, ma'am. But you can send me a letter, an email for sure. All right, or us. So I just want to keep the tone, and the tone has been very respectful, and I'm actually grateful for that in our community. I know you may have some other things to say, but I'll open it to council and maybe get some direction. Very complicated. Money is one hand, but folks maybe not feeling totally heard is another. Rather than ascribing fault for that, let's just do it better, right, and move on and get a nice, successful plan. That's what I'm all about. What do you all think in terms of direction on the issue? I mean, part of me says let's give that ceiling a chance. That's kind of where I am right now. Others say, oh, it'll never work. We don't know if it'll work. I mean, a lot of the anecdotal information is without the sealant. So I don't know for sure. Others have an opinion, well, that no matter what sealant you put on it, or glue, or whatever we call it, it's not going to work. We really don't know that, but I'll leave it to others. Maybe, Ms. Deasy, you want to tackle some questions or comments? I really want to focus in on next step and see those 2 decision points up there, and let's just kind of tighten it up. We have limited time and a lot of big items, including this one. Vice Mayor Deasy, and then I'll
I'll give it a shot. I love the skate park, and it is cool that people travel here for it. My son is a scooter. I don't know if you're allowed to do that, but he does scooter out there. And it's an awesome place. Thank you for taking the initiative to make things better, and thank you for sharing what should be. I guess, is this really our decision? I guess it's a good partnership with Parks and Recreation, and so I guess where I could tell you what I think, but I think it might be more important as an exercise and for everyone involved to come together with Parks and Recreation and figure it out there. That was.
Well, it is our decision because it's a money decision, and that's why it's here, right? Okay. If you assume that we don't contribute any money or anything else, and staff time is a decision, how we utilize our resources.
So you've got $0 versus $25,000, and that's where I feel like there's got to be somewhere in between that, and so that's when now you get into this detail that I wonder if Parks and Rec might work out.
Okay, I'm not.
Okay,
I'm not disagreeing with that. I mean, just let's have a conversation about it.
Okay, well, so $25,000 for fund paver installation, that is a lot of money. I guess so that is hard to understand. My guess is that it's such a small job that maybe people don't want to do it. But I also asked my neighbor who's a contractor how much it would cost, and it was like $7,000 with pavers. So that's why I feel like it's I don't know, there might be more work to do there. Yeah.
I was just going to joke and say your neighbor has a job then.
Yeah. She's here. I did have one more. What was my other? I'll leave it at that. Oh, well, I did have a question. Can city staff not do that job? Can lay pavers? Because I have another friend who did it himself in his backyard. He's very handy, but.
Every month, our staff goes out and does an inspection of the sidewalks in downtown and Miley Park and other public spaces. And when there's a repair that needs to be done, they do that. They repair the pavers. They can do it. Yes.
So is that one of the options?
No.
Okay.
Because we have a lot of work to do already, and it's not built into our work plan. That was not something that was put into the budget. And so the direction was if it wasn't budgeted, it's not in, and I will have to disagree with Mr. Camillo's.
I'll just say that.
I wanted to disagree first, Mr. Camillo. Finish your thought, and then we'll go to you. What did you want to say?
And everybody can have their own opinions, but I disagree that we have an abundance of pavers available when we still need them for other repair projects. So and that's okay. We can all have different.
I mean, that's fine. I trust your judgment on that. You said you had 2.5 pallets at Crane. There's other pavers at the Courtyard, or no?
I cannot confirm that. No.
Okay. Well, all right. And who knows if they're even usable? I mean, you can have pavers anywhere sitting for 15 years. I'm not sure if they're usable or not, but we should check that out. Now back to Mr. Camelo, sorry. I just want to get down the clarity there.
So we can certainly do that, and we have our employees a lot of skill sets, and one of the advantages of having the sidewalks as we did in the condition they were for the last 10 years, they got pretty good at replacing pavers. So we can do that. It's a matter of establishing priorities and then determining where this fits in some of the other work. So we can have that conversation and determine their priorities and create a plan and get it done. So yes, we can do it in-house. It probably won't cost $25,000, but then something else is not going to get done, right? So that's the other, again, this is a conversation we've had in other forums about staff policy alternatives in terms of priorities. So it's not that we can't do it. The question is, what else do you not want to do or delay?
Mr. Barrett.
So, for the record, I am a skater. So, that's for my kids. They won't believe that, but I used to have some pretty good trucks and equipment. But on this subject, I think, Mrs. Finney, I appreciated her comments and all the comments we've heard. I think there's an opportunity here to get back with the committee and then talk through this, and if things still change and we verify some of the items Mr. Smithers said, and then come back for direction. Of course, if there's a budget implication there, of course, we'd be very sensitive to that, as you are, right? Everybody knows that. We're working through that. But I think there's an opportunity to get back together and talk through it and work this out.
Ms. Patarotto, thoughts?
Yes, so I agree with Councilmember Barrick. I think I would, for the time being, I think definitely trying to stabilize the DG. I think we should be doing that. I have DG in my backyard, and they mixed it with, I forget exactly what they mixed it with, but by our bocce court in our backyard.
Seashells.
No, that would be on the bocce court. There are the oyster shells. But it's some form of a concrete that they, like glue that they mix in with the DG, and it's around our bocce court, and it works out great. But I do understand if it's utilized a lot, and you've got people walking over it a lot and riding bikes over it, it's going to get broken up faster. So it's going to be hard to keep up with it. So, I mean, I think for the time being, keeping up with it, but I think while we're keeping up with it, we should be talking to Parks and Rec. We should be talking to, like our community members have mentioned, there are other people that have done, like the paver work on Main Street. That could potentially be able to help us for less money to be putting in the pavers. I think I applaud our staff for the work that they've done thus far for doing all of this. Again, I know this is always, that add-on work that kind of goes, it feels like unappreciated, but it's very appreciated. And so I really want to thank you for all of your hard work. I just think that, I think it's good to continue to look into how to make this better for less money if we can.
All right. We're past 9 o'clock. I'll need a motion to extend. I think we should probably extend to 9:30. If I can get a motion, that'd be great. Hopefully it won't go that late, but let's give ourselves a little time.
I'll make a motion to extend to 9:30.
The motion to extend to 9:30 is our second.
Sadly, I'll second.
Sadly, I will call for a roll call.
Vice Mayor Deasy.
Yes.
Councilmember Barrick.
Yes.
Spatarotto.
Yes.
And Mayor Doring.
Yes. All right. You were finished with your comments, correct? I'm okay. I wasn't sure if you wanted, is it your thought that we should allow this to go back to the Parks and Recreation Committee, have them work through some of these issues with the skate park committee? Others thinking the same thing? What kind of more specificity do we need in terms of, I think we're not going to really know. It's kind of hard to predict. But, I mean, it'd be great if the skate park committee just paid for it all, but solve our problems. Then we don't have to come back, right, Mr. Camelo? But what do you think is,
Well,
I know it takes longer, it's a little bit more process. Looks like the community wants more process, and that's a good idea sometimes.
Sure, absolutely. I think what I'm hearing is that we'll have conversation with the committee. They have some good ideas. We'll explore. We'll share with them some of our constraints, and maybe there's a way in which we can come up with some solutions that make sense. At that point, I don't know whether we want, depends on the cost and what comes out of it, we may bring it here, or we may go back to the planning commission, Park and Rec Commission. So stay tuned, clearly we'll talk to you about it. So we'll do that next.
All right. Ms. Milton, go ahead.
If I can get a point of
Absolutely.
clarification, because it's going to take some time to have meetings and discussions and things like that. So in the meantime, would you like us to add the stabilizer, or would you not? Because there's,
There's one yes.
Okay.
How about others?
Yes, it sounds like that would be better than the existing situation.
Does it make it harder to if there's a decision to do something different, is it harder to pull up if
Yes.
there's stabilizer
yes,
on
it is. That's fine.
Nothing you can't do with the front.
Yes.
I
We have equipment that you've generously let us buy, so.
think there's
we can use it.
consensus to go ahead and use a sealant, see how that goes, and at the same time have these discussions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. That's a good question, obviously, and so good. All right. Okay. Let me get back on track here. Okay. Mr. Camillo, do you think we'll have enough time to go through both of these items in the next half hour, 13.3, 13.4, or should we take them in? I can imagine that the presentation on the CIP may be long, but I don't know.
It is, actually, it's not that long, and it's important that we do that today. The item 13.3, of course, we can postpone if you so desire.
Yeah,
So
well,
my
that's what I'm
suggestion
asking.
is-
What's your best
Yeah,
recommendation?
my suggestion is we go with 13.4 first,
Okay.
and we come back.
All right. If we have enough time, or we can postpone the other items.
Ms. Milton, you can just stay there because we may need you, so.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, would you like me to introduce the next topic?
I appreciate it if you do.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
With that, I'll just say that, this is the presentation of a CIP plan for next fiscal year, and actually it goes back to 2930. With that, I'll just turn it over to Director Leach.
Thank you, City Manager Camillo. Good evening, Mayor, council members. Seatbelts on, hands and feet inside the car at all times. This may be a new record for a CIP presentation. Before you this evening is, in fact, a request to adopt the 5-year capital improvement plan, and we'll talk through the various components of that and field questions along the way. But it's about 37 slides, so we're going to move quickly. Here's an overview of the agenda, which we talk about projects in the plan, some of the funding sources, the process that we've gone through to vet the CIP and the projects through various committees and commissions. Talk a little bit about the unfunding and the 20-year lack of funding, and then field some questions at the end. Wanted to, for those of you who do keep your CIP booklet handy next to your nightstand and you're constantly thumbing through it, there's a little bit of a difference between this year's and last year. You'll see on the top is what was approved last year in September of 24. Compared to what we're looking at this year, a few of the columns and differentiating, the CIP really talks about why we did that. There's instructions in the preamble to the CIP booklet. If you have any questions as to why we did that, we can field those questions now, but there are differences in numbers, and part of that is because we deferred some of the projects based upon the ability to deliver them, delays based upon permitting, procurement, funding. So there's a variety of things that would cause certain projects to their current spending, projected spending, to be deferred to future fiscal years. And that's why you would see, for example, fiscal year 25-26 under the current proposed does not match the 25-26 by about 10 million because much of that money has been moved out to subsequent years. Questions? Moving along. A little bit of overview of the number of projects per CIP category. So this is the number of stormwater projects. There's 4 active projects in there. And then you can see in fiscal year 26 through 30, what we're proposing to be appropriated. And again, the appropriation really is for fiscal year 26 alone. 25, 26. For subsequent future years, it's really a plan. Moving on. Then from where does this money come from? The top 7 categories, by far, by almost, $8 million is the water capital bonds that are being issued. And then we've got unidentified. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Measure T/U. We're still going to carry that historic name for at least another cycle or 2 as an homage to Measure T before we put it to bed. General obligation bonds, general fund, and then you can see down below all remaining funds equates to about 2.2 million with the 5-year CIP valuation of 67 million and change. How do we possibly dream up all these projects? Well, I'm glad you asked. So there's a variety of studies and reports, sources of information between things generated out of Napa Bike Coalition, Napa Valley Transportation Authority, regulatory compliance. So as you can see, there's a variety over the last 10 years or so of sources of where these projects have been dreamed up. Adoption process. So this is the final stage of our traveling roadshow. We've been to any imaginable committee that would be willing to listen to our show, and they've been quite attentive and engaging, and we appreciate that. And so we've summarized really what's kind of come out of each one of those meetings here. We did just finish up this presentation, a little backup. We just finished the presentation this afternoon, and Ms. Opp did post this presentation to the website, so it is available for the community and council for interaction. But so you can read through these and some of the high-level comments that came out of a variety of the committees and commissions. I think one of the main highlights was out of the Measure H Oversight Committee. The chair reminded both staff and the committee that it is not the committee's purview to select projects. Their purview really is to making sure that the money is being spent according to the ordinance. And so it's not really their purview to select projects. It's not their purview to select schedule of delivery of projects, making sure that we're complying with the ordinance, and it's fairly limited. So that was reassuring. Councilmember Barrick.
I have a short question.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Barrick, you may speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's late and my eyes are glossing over.
I saw you.
In regards to the Finance Committee, they have looked at the SIP, and I believe can you answer the question about the 68 million unfunded SIPs that was included on the staffing report some months back? Did we ever get clarity on if that was truly unfunded from the general fund, or there's going to be some changes on how we allocate it? I can't recall.
Drawing a blank. So is that projected out future years?
Yes.
I may be able to answer that. So what former ACM Mitz had done was taken various reports that some of them he identified earlier in an earlier slide, look at all those projects that had been identified and apply an inflation factor to them and came up with a list. And then, of course, when we were working at that time with Vice Mayor Hall and then Councilmember Kennelly, and in fact, before he became a council member, in looking at that list to make sure that we captured all the items that we might need in the future, of course, subject to council discussion and decision. One of them is an example that's been brought up often is a city hall, and the item was listed there as $15 million. Of course, it depends on how we go about it. If we rent it or if we choose to purchase a current site, it'd be a different number. If you have to build a new one, say at Adams, it'd be much higher. So those kinds of assessments were made, and that list was derived strictly for the general, the list had been in 3 categories: water, wastewater, and general fund. I think the list that you're referring to was a subset of that, was just for the general fund. It was intended to be a comprehensive list.
Okay, so we can confirm that it's unfunded, but
Correct.
what hasn't been decided is the realistic amount. We haven't gone through that yet outside of that first
So
exercise.
That list is actually one of the final slides, and it's a similar slide that was presented in the draft budget presentation last meeting. I think it might be the final or next to the last slide, but we'll keep rolling.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
keep
you.
rolling. Exciting about delivering some civic projects, the few and the proud. So we've completed the lighting. Let me just make sure you can see that correctly. Completed the lighting and Jacob Miley Park. Jacob Miley Park, we haven't accepted the project yet because it's in a required maintenance period with the contractor. And so that is still being active, but we will be accepting that project probably later this summer. And so we do still have the Baldwin Park fence and pathway repair. The playground equipment at Crane Park is being in the process of being repurposed, and Director Jans is working through that process with the granting agency. Parks and Rec Master Plan, as you are aware, is in full swing. And then we have the Trails and Open Space Amenities Phase 1, which is $50,000 to go towards some of those placemaking and wayfinding signs to kind of help people find some of the neat trails in the area. Continuing with civic projects, so where are we going to find this illustrious money to fund some of these exciting opportunities? General fund is kind of the main source of funding for many of these projects. Park impact fees can be, as long as it's expanding service for that particular facility or amenity. It cannot be used for rehabilitation as a requirement of AB 1600. Other opportunities for Prop 68 grants, development agreements. We are having a number of development coming in, and some of them will have development agreements, and there's an opportunity to negotiate public benefits for which some of that funding can go towards park projects. And then for future opportunities, which I think the Finance Committee has touched on, ballot measures including parcel tax, a landscape maintenance district, and then funding opportunity TBD. Now diving into streets and storm drain, here's a list of a few of the projects that are incredibly popular in the CIP, which I get calls on all the time as to when are they going to start, when are they going to be done, and here we are. Downtown sidewalk projects. Did you ever think this project was ever going to start? Raise your hand if you did. So anyway, I've been here for 2.5 years, and it's been in its slow churn, slow curing process ever since then. But we're expecting to get through the Caltrans process within the next month and a half so that we can take this project out to bid and actually build it this fall. The Grayson South Crane rehab project, a good chunk of that is already completed, which is the Grayson portion. The South Crane from Grayson all the way out to Sulphur Springs Road. Yes, it's the south end. So that entire stretch of South Crane Avenue will be rehabilitated this summer. And then Oak Avenue, the long-awaited Oak Avenue project, unfortunately, the worst of it's going to be done this summer, and it's going to be left kind of a disaster because we're doing the undergrounds first, which is the rehabilitation of the sewer, storm, and water services. And then in summer of 26, we'll finish the surface improvements, which will be the paving, curb gutter, sidewalk, trees, trash cans, bike racks, and such. And we are coordinating the surface improvements with the Vine Trail project. And then also this summer, we'll be delivering our R2579 project, which is the pavement restoration project. And that's going to be primarily some microsurfacing in various streets around town, a few of the parking lots, some surfaces at our wastewater treatment plant. And then finally, late fall will be the Spring Street Highway 29 intersection project. As you're aware that we received some funding for that project, safety improvement funding to be able to relocate the crosswalk crossing 29 to the north leg, and then having some bulb outs and some long-awaited safety improvements. Off to pavement. We love pavement here, don't we? And one of the things we wanted to do is just clarify messaging. And so we've had, over the last 2.5 years plus that we've been here, and even before that, we've had some messaging about during certain times where we've said the pavement condition index around town is X. And then we come up with these data sets that look like this, that look different. And so we wanted to explain that there is a delta that happens at times when you take a snapshot of a particular index using the tools that we have at our disposal. And that may look different because it's a snapshot in time than the annualized or averaged data that we get from the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. So the graph that you see on the left reflects that annualized data in a report form versus the snapshots in time that we've reported in a variety of settings to council, to the public, and so forth. So you can see that there's a little bit of a variation there, but by and large, I mean, that really the moral of the story is that we've increased the PCI in the last 3 years, primarily from about a 47 to a 64. And so just want to celebrate that and acknowledge that, you know, we're progressing through using Measure T/U funding as it's intended to be, and actually getting more mileage, pun intended, out of that funding than I think had previously been exercised. So kudos to our staff.
Indeed.
Thank you. And so here's kind of the snapshot of how we're programming the money over the next 5 years, specifically to Measure T/U, and it is primarily pavement and more pavement, ramp improvements at intersections where applicable. Again, a couple of years ago, the council approved the recommendation of staff alternating between 1 year microsurface, the next year a larger pavement rehab project. This does not reflect that. And so what we'd end up doing is we'll end up, because the process of evaluating the streets and selecting the streets is on a kind of a triennial cycle, we didn't want to kind of try to figure that out and pre-program that. So we just program it based upon what we anticipate receiving from Measure U, and then have that flexibility to advance stuff forward or use the backlog as it's available.
You don't determine that by election year?
No, sir.
Okay.
Thank you for that question. Moving on. So the other thing we wanted to reflect is, so what would it look like to get to a level of, currently we're at a PCI, or pavement condition index, of 64, as reflected in this point here, here and here in fiscal year 25. What would it take with our current funding to get to a pavement condition index of 70? Well, with our current funding, we're projecting to get to a PCI of 70 by fiscal year 26. So that's here. But what if we were aspirational and we wanted to get to a PCI of 80 and have bragging rights with Yountville? Well, then that would take an additional about $280,000 additional funding per year to address kind of the worst of the worst streets. And you'll see, and main reason why we're able to not appropriate additional fundings and get up to 70 is really primarily for the rehab that's going to happen on South Crane. So, other highlights. I just did want to, we presented this text to the Measure U committee, or Measure H, sorry, for the general obligation bond. And really, as you well know, that particular ordinance, it was very broad, gives staff, council a lot of discretion in terms of the projects and their eligibility, which we appreciate as it comes to delivering projects. And so we wanted to talk through the process that we went through with the Measure H committee. This is what was kind of previously programmed in the last fiscal year, last CIP. So you can see as this was approved in, no, I take that back. So this was approved previously in the CIP for last fiscal year. And so then as we came to the Measure H committee and said, you know, this is reflecting an unprogrammed fund balance of almost $10.2 million. And so we said, well, I wonder if we can figure out how to program additional monies because of the needs that we're aware of. And so we presented this to the committee, and that's when they reinforced that go forth and prosper and make sure you're using the money accordingly. And so we're now have programmed into the CIP everything but $5,200. And you can see how the projection of the tranches, and we're in the process of delivering these projects. And so what we end up doing is move some projects from Wastewater funded, which, as you well know, was presented in the last council meeting, is pretty light on its availability of capital. So we've moved it from there into general obligation bond funded, which again is eligible, and anticipate delivering these projects. Any questions? I'll pause for 8 seconds. Similar slide for the issuance of water bonds. Last year we did issue the 10.5 million here, and this is according to the REIT study and the updated bond documents. We anticipate issuing 23 million in fiscal year 27, and then the final tranche in fiscal year 29. Again, it's really all subject to the ability to deliver these projects in a timely manner. So these may be pushed out depending on the ability to deliver projects. But all that to say, keep this number down here in mind, because again, this reflects 17.7 million that's unprogrammed yet, and that's foreshadowing a slide in the future. We did want to reflect as the volume of water projects, as you can see, is fairly extensive. Give you a couple snapshots of the years in which they're being programmed. 7.8 million in 26, and then we get up to 16.4 in 27, and so forth, for a total program of 67.1. And then we just wanted to also highlight in the conversation of the collaborative effort that your staff has made between admin services and public works, and ensuring that we reflect consistent numbers. And so this was presented at the draft budget meeting. This reflects the water fund and its available capital funding for fiscal year 26, and then you move into fiscal year 27. So 26, we're about 530,000 that's available for capital. In fiscal year 27, we're about 1.3 million. And so we just wanted to reflect in fiscal year 26 and 27, we're not programming any of that because we anticipate probably a need for some of that money in operations, because things are breaking. And that's kind of the reality and the nature of what's happening in operations. And so we just wanted to kind of have that cushion to have unprogrammed about 1.7 million, 1.8 million over those 2 fiscal years as a safety net, for lack of a better term. And then similarly, what we really wanted to kind of reflect is what was originally planned in the water and wastewater rate study in terms of the number of projects, their value, and when we anticipated delivering them. And so these 2 particular tables are trying to help communicate that there's an acknowledgement that projects are not being delivered as originally anticipated, but efforts are being made. The top table reflecting that in fiscal year 24, we were anticipating of delivering 5 projects. Well, in actuality, that has been necked down to 3 because it's being deferred to other fiscal years. And to date in fiscal year, we've only spent the 75,000. In fiscal year 25, we've got 3.2 that's being encumbered or expended. Much of that's going to be related to the Kearney Andrea water line rehab that was done last year. This is also related to design efforts being on the intake tower and valve replacement project, tank 2 rehab project, Napa intertie transmission main replacement. So some of the more significant projects are being developed in design. And so we're progressing through the list of projects as you see. Any questions on this slide? Silence is golden. And so I just wanted to reiterate, we presented this last year, the safe yield and water neutrality. This is really kind of a hot topic in our development services world and working with applicants and developers. This is kind of a main driver from making our water system sustainable as well as CEQA compliance. And so we'd gotten through a significant portion of the safe yield analysis, had presented it to a prior council during a study session, but then began realizing that implementing an updated water neutrality had some challenges with that. And so we took a pivot and began to say, let's put together a water management plan that looks at holistically over the entirety of all of the water assets between storm, recycled water, groundwater, additional well opportunities, additional water from Napa, and then develop a capital improvement plan associated with that that then could feed into a water neutrality implementation policy. And so that's where we're in the middle of the water management plan. The consultant has provided us the first 3 chapters in draft. I also anticipate this plan going to the Water and Wastewater Advisory Committee for them to kind of vet it as well in draft form. So we'll do the first draft review of those 3 chapters and then begin scheduling times and meetings with the advisory committee. Anything else? Oh, the other thing is we will be bringing the safe yield component of the consultant's work is really just about done. We're finalizing our internal review of that. So we'll be able to take that also to the Water and Wastewater Advisory Committee for their vetting. And some highlights on some projects and schedule for delivery. Bell Canyon Valve House replacement, looking to do that in fiscal year 27. Some of the challenges with, as you can imagine, the water related projects is really the timing and really kind of having to do some of these projects during our non-peak season. And so doing the Tank 2 rehabilitation project, that's really slated to be done this fall and into winter, kind of at the same time that the Napa Intertie replacement project is done. Those can kind of be done simultaneously with some construction techniques and means and methods. But we can't do the valve house and the intake tower project at the same time, just because of the dynamics of our supply and how we operate our system. And so then you can also see some of the other projects that we'll be delivering over the next several years.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Certainly.
It's 9:30.
And I want to make a comment before you proceed, Mr. Leach.
Mr. Walsh, do we have a hard stop at 9:30, or do we have a need for a unanimous vote, which we typically do?
I believe
anyway?
it's a unanimous vote at 9:30 and a hard stop at 10. I can double
You're right.
check.
I'm sure you're right. If wrong, we're in violation.
Yeah.
Look for a motion to extend to 9:45. I don't think we're going to finish that last item. I know we're not, but I'd like to get a vote on this one. Mr. Camello, is that okay with you? Okay. A motion to extend, please.
Motion to extend.
We're going to go to 9:45. It requires a unanimous vote. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Sally.
All right. There's a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Deasy,
Yes.
Councilmember Barrick,
Yes.
Spatteroto,
Yes.
and Mayor Dorian.
Yes. All right. Mr. Kamala, that's right.
I just want to point out that when the 5-year plan had been created on the rate study, that level of detail that Director Leach was describing, where you have to plan, and sometimes you cannot do certain projects at the same time. There's also a design element. The first couple of years was spent with design and preparation, RFPs, and so on. So I just want to make sure they understand, because at the end of the 5-year period, we may be sitting at the point when saying, you know, we thought we were going to have X number of projects delivered in year 2 and year 5 or whatever, and they didn't quite happen in the right sequence, or they didn't happen at all. I just want to make sure that there's a lot more to it than just coming up with a list and funding for it and making it happen. So I commend Director Leach and his team for taking the time to really get into that level of detail and plan it such that we can maximize the delivery of projects. And I just want to also and Stephanie is sitting there from his team, acknowledge that there's also the funding aspect of the planning that is really critical to this. So with that, I'll return back to you, Director Leach.
Stephanie, you killed it, and you're very worth it.
Woohoo! All right.
Mr. Leach.
I'll kind of cruise through some of these other slides because I want to get to the real highlight at the end of the presentation. Very similar slide. And related to wastewater, kind of talks about the funding appropriated per year. And similar, I wanted to show for fiscal year 26 as well as fiscal year 27. So fiscal year 26, we're looking at 0, and fiscal year 27, 306,000 and change available for capital, and in what we've programmed is 0 for the first year and 160 in the second year. So well below what's available for funding, knowing that we really want to kind of keep that cushion between what we program and what's projected to be available. Some of the highlighted projects that we're working on, Cronulla Pump Station is in active construction now. I believe this week they're starting the bypass pumping. If it's not this week, it's late next or early next week. The big delay on kind of starting that project was the procurement of the large pumps, but they are at the courtyard, and we're anticipating this project actually being completed by the end of June. So I've been told. The recycled pipeline pump station, we're working with a consultant to provide some proposal for that. So we'll be coming to you for action on that item. We've moved some of the annual sewer main replacements, advanced some money towards that. Again, that's GO bond funded, as well as high priority pipeline replacement with a total of $1.3 million over several years. And then we get into unidentified funding. Some of the projects we have currently programmed is the Napa Intertie Pump Station, the actual construction of that. The design is currently programmed, but the construction for fiscal year 29 is about $9.3 million. And then you have the water treatment plant SCADA microgrid project. Again, design has been funded, but there's the city match, and as well as construction, about 1.6. Wastewater treatment plant rehabilitation, there is 5.9 million in, the water treatment plant, 5.9 million in fiscal year 29, 2.5 in fiscal year 30, and then the ongoing main replacement of water mains. And so there's about a total unfunded about 19.8 million. And as we talked previously about the water bond projects and what had yet been programmed, keep in mind that's about 17.7 million. And so does it get us all the way there? Not quite. So maybe what we can do is in the next cycle of CIP begin drilling down into some of these other projects and actually program them and time them with the issuance of subsequent tranches of water bonds. Any questions in that regard? Still moving. So this is the what we talked about previously, the unfunded shortfall. This is what we've projected to and programmed to be funded, the 68.9 million, and then the 20-year cycle, as Mr. Camello had referenced, that was one of the pet projects of former ACM MITS, and so you see the delta per category for the 20-year shortfall. And again, this was the exact same table that was presented in the draft budget document. Questions? Silence. Okay. CIP dashboard is live and active and available. We did do a revamping of it. And so it's, believe it's a little more user-friendly, a little more intuitive, has some pretty good graphics and pictures, but it's active, it's real, it's on our city website. If anybody has any questions on where to find or how to use it, feel free to send me, Leslie, or Stephanie email, text, courier, pigeon, and we'll help you. And then the final thing before we field any questions is of 30 seconds. Just wanted to kind of give you a flyover if anybody does or does not know where some of these projects are. Lower Reservoir, great opportunity for non-potable water that's used for filling of pools, dust control. Right next to it is the Tank 2 that's scheduled to be rehabilitated this summer. And then we'll fly over to another significant project. We had mentioned this earlier, the intake tower project that, contrary to the belief of some, is vertical and still functioning, as well as the valve house replacement project. And then
Your counsel is not. But keep going.
So, and then we'll kind of follow quickly the alignment of, this is the water treatment plant transmission main. So you're going from the treatment plant at the end of Crystal Springs, down Crystal Springs Road, and then you continue to meets up with Deer Park and Fawn Park, and then it diverges there, and then cruises along Fawn Park and gets to Silverado Trail, and then we tour down Silverado Trail to Pratt, cross the bridge, and make a little bit of a turn, and come around the corner, and then finally meet the terminus. I mean, really what we're trying to reflect is this is a significant project. This is, and it varies from 24 to 18-inch size pipe, steel pipe. And so it's huge. So it's going to be a lot of fun to develop and deliver. And then rapidly we'll jump to Cronulla Pump Station. We'll show you where that's at and in the park there. And then we'll move to the beginning of the Oak Avenue project, starting at Madrona and then flying down to its new storm drain pipe that'll be discharging into Sulphur Creek. And then let's jump over to the wastewater treatment plant. Anybody dizzy yet? Wastewater treatment plant, recycle pipeline, and pump station. And then one of the kind of the last things we want to walk through is the Napa Intertie pump station project. That's the Rutherford pump station that is currently working with. And then the intertie pipeline replacement, contrary to the belief of some, is not starting at the pump station. In 2010, a portion of that pipe up to Mee Lane, from the pump station to Mee Lane, had been rehabilitated. So we're going from Mee Lane up to down 29. And again, this is a very significant project for this community. Continuing down 29, and then it terminates at, there's a Shack's Lane, but no, it keeps going, and then terminates at the Sulphur Creek Bridge. And with that, I will field 90 seconds worth of questions.
The pump station at Rutherford, I think it said $9 million total cost. Seems extraordinarily high.
Yeah.
Why is that? Talk to me about that, Mr. Engineer.
So
compared to what's out there now, unless I'm just getting the buildings wrong. I mean, funding or other funding that.
So the Rutherford pump station, so the design of the Rutherford pump station, that's where we received $1.5 million funding from Aguilar Curry for design.
Yeah, we got it from them. Yep.
My mistake. I think I probably make that mistake every time.
That's all right.
So the idea is to take the current structure that's not a structure and make a permanent structure.
Okay.
Masonry building, something secure, so with modern controls, and so that it's accessible via SCADA, remote access. It'll still have a towable generator associated with it, because the funding won't support that yet, but that's kind of the nature of the construction.
All right. I think you might need a motion unless there's other questions. Yeah, well, I mean, one question, I'll open it for public comment, but go ahead.
I think it is a clarifying question. So we're going to approve this, but I'm assuming, I heard about flexibility, I think, so some new information comes to light and there's change. So what does that mean when we approve this? Are we approving it setting in stone? Are we approving it with flexibility? What does that mean?
Yeah, so you're approving the appropriation for fiscal year 26.
Open it for public comment if you have any. I saw you raise your hand, so I'm not sure if this is your area.
Yeah, hi, Deanna Griffin, Friends and Foundation for supporting the library. And in the interest of time, I just want to acknowledge that we understand the prioritization of all the water categories and the streets as priorities. I'm interested not in this year, so this isn't about this year, but it is about the future. And I want to just say I'm looking forward to the CIP consideration process to be widely inclusive of all parts of the city early on in the process. Secondly, I do have an actual question, which is, are GO bonds restricted in use for water and wastewater CIP projects? Or may they be applied to civic CIP projects? I'm thinking about the future, not today. So this particular slide here is the actual language, but primarily it's related to sewer, water, storm, and infrastructure related to it.
Yeah, forgive me for not having the time to
Yeah.
read.
Oh, no,
on
no,
this.
no worries. It's a great question.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, other questions or comments? More comments, Mr. Camello?
I just wanted to, Vice Mayor Daisy's point, this item will come back to you on the 10th along with the operating budget, so at that time you'll be adopting both of them.
All right. I'll look for a motion, if you will, to adopt the staff's recommendation, approve the attached resolution.
I will make a motion to do just that.
Yeah, just to clarify, there's a resolution attached to this to adopt this program.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
So the motion is so made?
Second.
I'm just clicking on the resolution. Yes, there is a resolution. There's a motion and a second to adopt the resolution attached to the staff report. Madam Clerk, we'll have roll call, please.
Councilmember Barrick.
Yes.
Spataroto.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Deasy.
Yes.
And Mayor Doring.
Yes. Excellent report. I wish we had more time to get into the depth of it. You did a really good job of moving through a lot of slides in a quick period of time. Congratulations to your staff for the presentation. Stephanie, job well done. I was teasing you a bit, but excellent work. A lot going on here. Now we just need to execute.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that.
No pressure. All right. So I don't think we're going to go back. I don't think we're going to go back to that. I'm not sure if we're going to need another closed session before our next meeting. Mr. Camello, think about that. The one item that we didn't quite finish in closed session. So we'll give that some consideration if time is pressing on that.
Well, we've been talking, the city attorney, myself, and a couple others, including Director DeRosa and Ken here, are going to meet tomorrow. We'll chart a course forward, and if we need another closed session, we will request it, but we'll try to avoid it.
All right. I'm not sure if anybody's anxious to give a report with respect to your regional bodies and other liaison type duties. I'm not going to tonight. I'll try to get something in writing on a couple of the things I've been working on of late. So anything else for the good of the order here? Mr. Camello, Madam Clerk, we have it, everything?
I was just going to say thank you, DCM Milton, for 13.3, but we'll need to bring it back next time.
Yeah, that will be an interesting discussion. That was a really good report, and looking forward to that conversation also. All right, the meeting is adjourned. I hope you all have a great night. Find joy where you can. All right.